Okay then, we're going to start at the very beginning and make sure that you can properly download and install Unreal Engine onto your computer. So in order to do that, the first thing we'll need to do is go to this website here. And you can see the URL for that is just up here, or I'll have it linked in the description below if you want to just click on the link. It brings you to this page here, Unreal Engine 5. You can see there's a download button in the top right of the screen, or you can scroll down a little bit just to see the very cool Matrix City demo. And then if we go to here, download now, get started with Unreal Engine comes up. And if we just scroll down a tiddly bit, we've got download the launcher. Now, before you can install Unreal Engine, you must download the Epic Games launcher. That's just how it works. So we'll click to download that. And you'll see, I just checked this up here. Now, in Chrome at least, it gives you this warning telling you that it might be dangerous. I don't think it is. So I'm going to click on keep. And then we'll just let that download. And now that it's downloaded, I'm just going to click on the file to open it. And then we get the setup doohickey here. Now, I'm just going to change the install location because I like to keep this on a different drive. So I'm going to put it on my D drive. And then I'll click on install. As you're installing, there will be a couple of times where a notification will come up and say, do you want to install this? Because of the way it works in Windows, I can't actually capture that window and show it to you. But you just need to click on yes and let it install everything that it needs. Then you'll probably get to this stage here. It'll open itself up, look for any updates and get itself updated. And once it's done, it should bring you to this splash screen here and open up and you'll get to the sign-in screen. Now, if you haven't already got an Epic Games account, this will be the point that you need to make one. And you do want to make sure you've got a proper Epic Games account associated with your use of Unreal Engine, because that will allow you to use some of the assets we're going to use later in this tutorial series. So make sure you do it the right way. I've already got an Epic Games account, so I'll just click on sign in. I'll put my details in. Make sure I blur it out so you guys don't try and send me any weird spam. And then log in. It does feature this two-factor authentication thing, so it will want to send you some kind of code to make sure it's you. So I've just got an email, I think, no, a text. So I'll just input that and then continue. Okay, so that's the installation of the Epic Games Launcher sorted. Now we need to get on to actually installing Unreal Engine. So in order to do that, if you look on the left-hand side, we've got Unreal Engine listed here, so we'll click on that. Here it is. And you can see there is something up here for Install Engine, but that doesn't let you choose which version you want. So I'm going to go over here to Library, and then you can click on plus here for Engine version. So I'm going to do that, and then you can choose the version you want. So I'm just going to choose the latest version for this tutorial, which is currently 5.2, and then click on Install. You will need to agree to the terms and conditions, obviously, and then choose where you want to put it. So as I have done previously, I'm going to put this on D, and then I can install. This will take a while. I recommend that you disappear off and get a cup of tea or something at this stage. Come back in maybe half an hour. You can see this is a 22 gigabyte install. That's a pretty big download. So give that some time, come back, and then we'll be able to just look at getting this finished.
1 hour later.
Okay, so this has been going for about an hour and it's just installing now the last 30 megabytes or so. So I wanted to just show you this because what will happen is it will finish the download and then it will move on to installing and then verifying. So it's still going to take a few more minutes before we're ready to launch the engine. So I'll come back when it's ready.
A few moments later.
And it's finally done. You can see that I've got this project files not associated message, and that just means that it will allow the Unreal Engine project files to be opened with Unreal Engine. So we'll click on Fix Now for that. And all that is left to do now is to launch the engine. So we can click on Launch. Now at this stage, it will do some further installation, if needed, of prerequisites, other applications, other software that's needed to make Unreal Engine run. So just let that happen in the background, and when it's done, it will open Unreal Engine. And now that that's all done, you can see that the splash screen has opened up and it is beginning to open the engine. This does take a little while, and the first time you open Unreal Engine, it has to do what is called compiling shaders, and that also takes a while, especially if you've got a particularly slow CPU. So you just have to be patient with that until we get to the New Projects or Open Recent Projects screen. And the engine's finally open. You can see it's taken me to my Recent Projects tab because I've had this installed before. However, you might see something different. That's it for this step. You've now got Unreal Engine installed and open. In the next step, we'll take a look at how we go about creating a new project. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step then, we're going to take a look at how you go about creating a new Unreal Engine 5 project, which is essentially a file and some folders with content in that contains your entire game. And you can see we've got the project browser here. This is some of the recent projects that I've been working on. You probably won't have this if you just installed it or if you're just getting started. So we're going to go to the Games tab here. There are some other things that you can work on, but for this tutorial, the scope that we're looking at is Games. So we'll go to Games. And then within this tab, you can see that we've got these templates, and these are really good for getting started. They come with some assets, levels, characters, a little bit of logic to get you started in certain types of games or projects. So you can see we've got first person, third person, top down, vehicle, handheld, AR, and virtual reality. The virtual reality one is really useful if you're new to VR. But for what we're going to be doing today and in this project, we're going to choose the third person project template. There is some information about it here. And then we need to make some choices here in terms of the project defaults. So we can choose between Blueprint and C++. This is how we go about coding our game. And C++ could be its own course on its own. This is aimed at beginners, so we're going to stick to Blueprint, which is a visual scripting language. It's much more accessible. It's a lot better for learners. Then we need to choose the target platform. We've got a choice between desktop and mobile. Again, to keep things simple, we're just going to aim for desktop. And for the same reason, we're going to keep the quality preset to maximum over scalable, because I don't really want to worry too much about how we scale performance. We are going to turn the starter content on, which gives you some additional meshes and effects and sounds and materials that can help you when you get started, which we will use some of these going forward. And we're going to leave ray tracing turned off because this is designed to be a course that's accessible to everyone, and unfortunately not everyone has hardware that is capable of doing ray tracing. So we're going to leave that off for now. Then we need to choose somewhere to save this to. So we need to give the project a name first of all, and I'm going to call mine Robot Game, like that. And then you need to choose somewhere to put your project. So here you've got project location, you can click on the folder, and I've already got a folder called UE5 projects, which is fine for where I want to put it. So I'm going to keep it there, but you might choose somewhere else on your PC that you want to put it. And then we can click on create. This will now do some stuff. It's going to copy some files over, set the project up, put it where we asked it to, and then when we're done, it will put us into the level editor. And the level editor has now opened. This is the default screen you will see in a new third-person project in Unreal Engine 5. In the next step, we're going to have a quick tour of this interface so that you know which part does what, and then we'll be able to move forward with the tutorial. So I'll see you in the next step to look at the interface. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Now we'll take a look at the different aspects of this window we have here, which is known collectively as the level editor, and we'll explain what each part of this interface is responsible for doing. Okay, we'll start up here at the top then. This here is known as the menu bar, and it's got options like File, Edit, Window, Tools, Build, and every editor within Unreal Engine has one of these menu bars. Some options like File, Edit and Help will be in every single one of these editors, but some are editor specific. In this case, things like Build and Actor are specific to the level editor. Then we've got this tab here. This just tells us kind of what we have in a specific tab, and we can dock different tabs along here, which we'll do later. This tells us that we're in third person map, which is a level. And then next down below that, we've got this section here, which is known as the main toolbar. This contains shortcuts to some of the most common tools and commands in Unreal Engine, and it's divided into, we've got the save button here. We've then got this little drop down here, which is mode selection, and that allows us to change between editing, selection, foliage, mesh paint, and we'll touch on some of these as we go forward. Next, we've got these three here are kind of your content shortcuts. So you've got create here. This lets you add things to your level or to your world. Then you've got this one here, which allows you to get into blueprints and edit those. And the next one is to do with cinematics and sequences, and all that kind of stuff. So creating things like cutscenes. Then we've got the play mode controls. This contains shortcuts such as play, skip, stop, eject. So it's basically for running and testing your game within the editor. Then we've got the platforms menu. And that is just a series of options you can use to configure, prepare, deploy your project for different platforms, such as desktop, mobile, or consoles. And then way over here to the right, we've also got settings, and this just contains various settings for the Unreal Editor, Level Editor, Viewport, and game behavior. And we'll touch on some of these later as well. Moving on then, this big ass window here is known as the level viewport. And this just is responsible for displaying the content of the level that's currently open. So when you open a project in Unreal Engine, the project's default level opens in this viewport by default, and it's where you can view and edit the contents of your level, whether it's an environment, a product visualization app, or anything else really. And the level viewport can generally display the content of the level in two different ways. There's perspective, which is what we're looking at now, which is kind of a 3D view. And we've also got orthographic. So if we change here from perspective to top, this would be an orthographic view, and we can see kind of a wireframe view of the level, and that's a 2D view that just looks down one of the main axes, such as X, Y, or Z. But let's just pop that back into perspective. The next important part of the interface we can't even see right now, and that's because it's called the content drawer. And if you just press Control and Spacebar on your keyboard, like that, your content drawer will pop up, and you can see that it's labeled down here, content drawer. You can also just click on it from down here at any time. And this is essentially a file explorer window that displays all of your assets, blueprints, and other files that are contained within your project, and you can use it to browse through your content, to organize it, and even to move them between different games and projects. And here you can see we've got like a file browser window here, and we can also see some of the folders here within the content folder. So you've got two different ways of laying that out. And now I'll just press Control and Space again to get rid of that. And along the bottom, this entire strip is known as the bottom toolbar. And this contains shortcuts to the command console, which is here, which is incredibly useful. You've also got the output log, which is here. This will tell you, whether or not you've got problems within your game. You've got derived data, which we're not going to touch on. Source control status for if you're working, on a shared project between a big team. Again, we're not going to touch on that for this exercise, but lots of useful stuff down here. In the top right of the screen, this is called the outliner. It used to be known as the world outliner, and it basically just displays a hierarchical view of all the content in your level. By default, it's docked up here in the upper right corner of the window. You can move it if you want to, and you can use this to quickly hide or reveal actors by clicking on the associated icon here. So you can see that's making that appear and disappear. You can access an actor's context menu by right-clicking on it. So, there are certain things that we can do with an asset, and that will come up if we right-click. You can create, move, and delete content folders to help to organize it. Here you can see we've got a folder here that contains block 1. And also, down below that, we have the details panel. So if we click on something, it will bring up the details for whatever we have selected. And that allows us to change some of the properties like location, rotation, scale, what material it has on. There's lots of stuff going on in here, which we'll cover as we go through the tutorial. And that brings an end to our quick whistle-stop tour of the Unreal Engine default interface, the level editor. In the next step, we're going to take a look at how you move around in 3D space, so how you navigate using the mouse and keyboard to get around in Unreal Engine. So I'll see you in the next step for that. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step, we're going to take a look at the different ways that you can move around in the viewport in Unreal Engine, because there are quite a few different ways and they're all useful in their own different ways. So we'll start with what is known as standard navigation, which is kind of default behavior in Unreal Engine. And the way you do it is by essentially just clicking and dragging within the viewport. So if I go into the viewport here, and if I do left click and drag, that allows me to kind of move forwards and backwards. And if I move my mouse left and right, I can also kind of look left and right as well. So that's that one. We can also right mouse button and drag, which rotates the camera by keeping it still, so I can kind of look all over the place. That's pretty useful. And if we do left mouse button and right mouse button and drag, that allows us to move up and down, which it makes me feel like I'm on a great big trampoline, so that's fun. Another really useful part of the standard navigation is you can do something called focusing the camera. So if you just select something within your level and press F on your keyboard, that's F. There you go. That will then not only zoom in on that asset, but when we move to another navigation system later, it allows you to tumble the camera around that as well. So it kind of becomes the focus of the camera, which is really useful. But I'll just put my camera back out here for now. And we'll move on to the game style navigation. And the way that that one works is with using the WASD keys on your keyboard, just like you would do in like a PC first person shooter. And you use those keys in conjunction with holding the right mouse button down. So if I now hold the right mouse button, if I press W and S and A and D, it will move me backwards, forwards, left and right, but in relation to where I am rotating the camera. So I also get to rotate the camera by default, and I can navigate around. And this is actually my preferred way of navigating around in Unreal Engine, because it's just easier and you can cover a lot of ground quite quickly. So that's 2 navigation methods we've looked at so far. The next one we'll call pan, orbit and zoom navigation, which is essentially the same sort of navigation that Autodesk Maya uses, which I find particularly useful because I use Maya quite a lot. The way that that works is you generally hold Alt on your keyboard and then some kind of combination of mouse buttons. So if you hold Alt and left mouse button, that kind of tumbles your camera around, and this is the one that works in conjunction when you focus. So if I focus on this block here and press F, now when I do Alt and left mouse button, my camera orbits around this particular mesh, which is super useful. You can also do Alt and right mouse button, and what this does is dollies the camera, it essentially moves it in and out. Although apparently it will only let me get that close and then it goes crazy. That's cool. And then you've got Alt and middle mouse button, and what that does is tracks, so it'll track side to side and up and down, which is kind of useful too. One thing that you can use in conjunction with all of these navigation methods is this icon up here, which is your camera speed. So at the moment we're moving at a speed of 1, but we can speed that right up to, oh my gosh, it goes up to 32. I'm just going to go to 8. I don't want to go too crazy. But now when I do my game controls, you can see that's moving much quicker, which is not great for precise movement, but if you're working on a big open world, you will need a higher camera speed to just get around. So that's pretty cool, but I'm now going to set that back to 1 because we're working on quite a small scale. And what is also worth knowing is that you can turn off a lot of the extra things that you don't necessarily want to see. So you can see we've got all these icons here that are kind of doing stuff. We've also got this here, which is a volume. And you don't necessarily want to see that if you're just trying to work out what your game looks like. And to make that go away, you can press G on your keyboard, and that enables game mode. And that will just make things appear as they will appear in your game, which is super useful. And one other final thing that's worth knowing is if you press F11 on your keyboard, that will enter immersive mode, and that will just make your viewport window go full screen. And you can toggle that on and off just by pressing F11. So if I press that again, it'll put me back. Okay, at this stage, I need to set you a challenge, because what we're not going to do now is go over navigation anymore. So I want you to spend a minute and just get to grips with being able to move around. Try the different methods out, find your favourite, and make sure you're ready and confident in navigating 3D space before moving on to the next step, where we're going to create a brand new level. So have a go, get good at navigation, and I'll see you in the next step. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. The last part of the Getting Started chapter then is going to focus on creating a new level in Unreal Engine. So the first thing we'll do is just go into the content drawer. So if you can remember what we said earlier, that is Control and space to get in there. And you can see that we've got some folders here. We've got characters, level prototyping, start content and third person. These are all stuff from the template we've chosen and from the start content that we added. But we want to add now a new folder so that we can put our new level in it. So we're going to right click in the content drawer and go up here to folder, and I'm going to call this levels, like so. So now we've got somewhere to put this level. Now what I'm going to do is just go into this levels folder, and I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it, or what I consider to be the wrong way to do it, and then I'm going to show you the right way to do it. So if we just right click in here and go to new level, and we'll just call it delete me, because this is going to get deleted. It's going to be so wrong. And then let's just save all, with a little button here to save everything, and we'll open that up. And it creates a level with nothing in it, which is kind of what we want, but we missed out a step because we did it that way. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to go back here to filters, and then I'm going to go back to my content folder, and this will just show every level within my project. So I'm just going to go back to this third person map, and then I'm going to delete me. So let's get rid of that because it's stupid. There we go. Right, I'm just going to turn that filter off. So to do that, we're going to go up to file, and there's a new level dialog here, so we'll click on that. We go up to file, and there's a new level dialog here, so we'll click on that. And this is the step that was just missed out because we just did it in the content drawer. We have the option to create an open world, an empty open world, a basic level, or an empty level. Now, incidentally, we do want an empty level, but most of my tutorials will actually start with a basic or an open world template. And they're really useful because they come with some really cool stuff like lights and a sky. But we do actually want to create an empty level, so we'll click on that and then go to create. And then we need to choose where we want this level to go, because at the moment we've created it, it's called untitled, and it actually isn't in our project. We need to save it before it will actually be part of our game. So we're going to go to file, we're going to do save current level as, and I'm going to call it ship, because this is the first part where we're going to have our robot inside a spaceship. And I'm going to put it in my levels folder. On save. Okay, and that is how we create a new empty basic level. So that brings us to the end of the first chapter in our journey to learn Unreal Engine 5. Hopefully you've stuck with it all right. In the next chapter we're going to put this level together, which will include bringing in the meshes, getting some materials put together, doing some lighting, and getting to grips with some more of the tools. I hope I will see you for the next chapter, but that will do it for this one. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello there and welcome back. We are now in chapter 2, which is crafting your first level. And over the next few videos, we're going to be creating this environment that you can see here. So you can see, oh, here we go. We've got all different pieces, and we're also going to set it up so that we can take the Unreal Engine 5 mannequin and run around this little level that we're creating. So that's what's coming up. And before we can get stuck into that, we're going to need to download the assets that are used to create this level. So that's what we'll look at first of all. There will be a link to the resource pack in the video description or in the course notes or wherever else I put it for you. And when you follow that link, you will see something like this. So here is the Unreal Engine 5 course resources. It's in a zip file. You'll need to just right click on it and go to download like that. I've already downloaded it though, so I'll show you that. It currently resides on my desktop. There it is, and before you can use it, you will need to unzip the folder. If you don't unzip it, you can't get at the files. So in my case, I'm just going to right click on it. I'm going to go to extract all, and then I'll just click on extract, and that will put it in a folder just beside it. And you can see that if we look inside, we have a folder called chapter 2, because we're currently in chapter 2, and here are the pieces we'll need. There will be more folders as I continue to build the course out, but for now we only need chapter 2. And then we've got these meshes here that we will need to import. So make sure you've got those downloaded before moving on. Now we need to go back into Unreal Engine. So here we are back in Unreal Engine, back in our empty level that we created last time. And what we need to do now, before we bring this mesh in, is a little bit of organization. So Control and Spacebar brings up my content drawer. You can see I'm still in my levels folder. So I'm just going to go back to the content folder by clicking here. And then here's my folders. I've got the levels one that I created last time. And we now need another one, which we're going to call meshes. So right click in some empty space, go to new folder. Give it a name, so I'm going to call this one Meshes. Beautiful, and then open that folder up. And it's this folder that we're going to put our first mesh in, and we're going to get a piece of floor and bring that in. So right click in the empty space in that folder, and then up at the top you've got the option to import to game/meshes, which is the folder we're in. And then it brings up this dialog, and you can see that I'm on my desktop here. Here's the folder that I've just extracted, so we'll go in there. And in the chapter 2 folder, and then we're looking for this mesh here. So it's sm_floor_1, and the SM denotes that it's a static mesh, just in case you wanted to know what that naming convention was all about. So we're going to open that, and then we are greeted with the FBX import options, and we need to make sure we get these right as we import. So the first thing that we're going to leave turned on is generate missing collisions, because I haven't created collisions for all of these meshes, so we're going to let Unreal Engine do that for us. We're also going to tick the box for combine meshes. I find this is generally quite useful in case you've left your assets as separate meshes in your 3D modeling application such as Maya. So we'll tick that, and then we're going to just scroll down. And one change that I want to make, we're not importing any materials with this. So where it says material import method, we're just going to go do not create material. And then import textures, no, we don't want to do that either, so we'll make that false. And that's now ready to import this first mesh. So we'll click on the import button. And then for some reason it closes your content drawer, so we'll just bring that back. And you can see that mesh is now imported into our meshes folder. So that will do it for this step. We've got our mesh in and we've done a bit of organization. And in the next one, we're going to open it up in the static mesh editor, add some materials and get it ready to put into the level. So I will see you in the next step. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Now that we have imported our first static mesh into our game, this step is going to be all about what we need to do to make changes to that mesh, such as putting materials on it, and we'll have a look at the static mesh editor as we do that. So you can see I've still got my content drawer open from the end of the last step. So what I will now do is just double click on this mesh here, and it opens this window which is known as the static mesh editor. And you can see we've got a viewport here, which allows me to look around the asset. You can see at the moment there's no material on it, so it shows us this kind of grey checkerboard little pattern thing going on, which is good. We have a tab here, which can be quite useful. We'll get to that later. We've got a menu bar across the top. We've got a toolbar just here. And then we've got a details panel here, which is really useful for changing the details. And we'll start by looking at the materials. That's the first detail we're going to look at. And because of the way that I've set these assets up to make it sort of a nice gentle learning curve, we've got two material slots here. And that means we can apply two different materials. And you can see I've just named them Material 2 and Material 1. For some reason they go in reverse order to what I did them, but I'm not upset about it, it's fine. And then we're just going to use this to put some materials on. So what I'll do first of all is work out which material is which by clicking on the highlight button here. So you can see this is just these strips here, which are like the accents. And so in this case, I know that I want them to have this blue colour. So what I'll do is click on where it says World Grid Material, which is the material that's currently assigned. And then we've got a whole list of materials that are available in the start content that we added when we created the project. And we're just going to use the material here, m_basic floor. And that's going to add a bit of a pale blue to these two strips. And then if I highlight the other bit, you can see that's just the rest of this mesh. And I want this one to have M asset platform. And again, if you're wondering about the naming convention, M denotes that it's a material. So that now saves this asset with materials on. It's looking pretty nifty. The only other thing I want to show you while we're in here is that because we imported it in a way that would generate collisions, we can now see what those collisions are. So where it says show up here, we can click on that, and then simple collision is always the one you want. So if we tick on that, we can then see what the collision looks like. And it's a very, very simple mesh that just sits around our actual mesh that will handle whether or not we should be able to fall through it or whatever. So that's good. Right, we can turn that off by just unchecking that box. And then the final thing we need to do to get this ready is save the asset. So you can see up here we've got an asterisk. That means it's unsaved, which isn't necessarily the end of the world. But if Unreal Engine was to crash before we'd saved this and we'd already put it into our level and done things with it, when we reopen it, it's all kind of gone. So it's a good idea to save these often and early. So we'll click on the little save icon here. There we go. And then we can close the static mesh editor. And then if we just bring this back, the asterisk's gone from here as well, and we can see the asset is there. One other thing that you might want to do just before we close out this step is I've already increased the size of my thumbnail. So if we click on the settings here, go to thumbnail size. I think it starts at medium. That's probably what size yours is at. If you want to make them a bit easier to see, you can go into your thumbnail size and do large or huge. Like huge is actually quite useful. I'm probably going to leave it on huge so it's easier for you guys to see what we're looking at. And that'll do it for this step. So we've imported our asset, and then we've added materials, had a look at the static mesh editor, and now we're ready to put it into our level. So I'll see you in the next step where we will do just that. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Now that we've added our floor mesh to our project, it's time to put it into our level and start building the whole thing out. So here it is, and we're just going to put it into the level by clicking and dragging it into the level, like that. And you can see that when I do that, we've got a yellow outline, but we can't actually see the mesh itself. Don't worry about that for now, we'll sort it in a second. The first thing I want to do though is get the position right. So making sure that it is selected, and you'll know it is because it's got the yellow highlight, but if not, you can always select it from your outliner up here just by clicking on it. And then let's have a look in the details panel at the location for it. So mine is currently set to -300, -90, -90, which is not where I want it. I want it to be right at the middle of my level, which in 3D coordinates is 0, 0, 0. So I'll type that in. So we'll put a 0 in there, a 0 in there, and a 0 in there. And you see that has now positioned it over there, which is fine. I can still see it. But if you can't, if you just click in your viewport, I've middle clicked there to make sure I didn't lose my selection, and then press F, it will bring you nice and close to your asset like that. So we've now got that in our level. So now we probably want to be able to actually see this. So the reason we can't see it is that there are no lights in the scene. If there's no lights, you can't see. And the way that we can get around this for now is where it says lit up here, we can click on that and just go to unlit, and you can see there's a keyboard shortcut of Alt and 3 for that, but we'll click on here, and that now makes it much easier to see. Now what we want to do is get more of these floor tiles in so that we can create a larger floor. So we're taking a modular approach here, which means we're taking smaller level modules and building larger level areas out of them. So we're going to need a second floor. So one way we can do this is to just go back into our content drawer, drag it in like that, And you can see it's nowhere near where I want it to be, so I'll just put it at 0, 0, 0. And I've now got 2 in the same place. And now I want to move it. And by default, your move tool should be enabled. You can see up here, mine is enabled, and I've got these manipulators here. But if for any reason it's not, you can just click on the tool there. So let's say you've got just your selection tool on. You can go to your move tool like that, and then this manipulator turns up. And then what I want to do is move that over here. And it's moving well enough, and I can get it lined up perfectly. But I want to show you a slightly better way of doing that. I'm just going to put that back. And we've got this up here, which is actually location snapping, or the grid snapping. And it's snapping in increments of 10 units, which I think is set to centimeters by default. And we want to change this to 50. So I'll click on that 10 there and make it 50. And then when I move it, I don't have to move it as many times like that. There's just 4 increments there. And then that's ready to go. And I've deliberately moved it positive on the y-axis, so that's 200. If you've gone the other way, like that, and it says minus 200, it's not the end of the world, but I just recommend going in the positive axis so that your project looks the same as mine. Okay, so now we've got 2. What I want to do now is add a third, but I don't want to just keep grabbing them from the content drawer. That'll take me forever, so we're going to duplicate this time. And what we do for that is press Control and D. That will do it, and you can see it then just moves it a little bit so that you don't kind of get lost. And what I'll do is put this back in line with the one that I've just duplicated it from, and then move it over like that. So we've now got 3, 1, 2, 3, and I want a 4th. And the way I'm going to do that this time is my actual preferred way of duplicating things, which is with your move tool on, hold Alt on your keyboard, and then you just drag, and then that just creates a copy. And we've now got 4 pieces of that floor, and you can see they're all named. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now what I want to do is get some more copies of this, and we're going to go over here, fill this empty space there. And rather than doing them one at a time, which will take quite a while, we're going to select multiples. So I'm going to click on one, then holding Shift, I'm going to click on the other 3, and that will select them all at once. And then I'll hold Alt on my keyboard, and that's going to allow me to copy 4 at once. So that's great. And now I'm just going to show you one final way of duplicating that I really like, and that's to hold Alt and Shift. And what this does, not only does it copy, but it also kind of pins the camera to it. So you can work your way along without having to reposition your camera every time. So I've now got 3 lines there. I'm going to add another 2, Shift and Alt and drag, Shift and Alt and drag. There we go. And that is going to be the basis of our entire little room, storeroom, I think I'm going to call it. And I'm just going to check that I've got enough. So I want 1, 2, 3, 4 on this axis, and I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that axis. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. And that will do it for this step. So we've learned about putting assets into the level. We've learned about going into unlit mode, and we've looked at different methods of duplicating the assets so that we can make more of them quickly. So we'll leave it there, and in the next step, we'll get our first light into the level. So I'll see you there for some lighting. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Now that we've got something to light, we will add our first light to the level just so that we can see what we're doing, and then we'll get a better idea of what these materials are doing as well. What we'll do first of all is put our level back into lit mode. So we're going to go from unlit here to lit. You see now everything's gone black again because there are no lights yet. And then we'll create our first light. We're going to create what's called a rect light, which is kind of short for rectangle light. And we're going to get it from this little button here, which is quickly add to project. So we'll click on that. There's a light section, and we're going to add a rect light. And then you can either just click on it like I have done there, or let me just undo that. You can also drag it out of the menu as well, and then you've already got it kind of there. But I actually quite liked just clicking it because it put it fairly central, so we'll do that. So this is our light, and you can see that it's directional, so it's not lighting this half of our floor, but it is lighting this half. And now we're going to need to look at another one of our tools, which is the rotation tool. So that's up here, so we'll turn that on. And then you've got 3 manipulators, and each one will rotate it on a given axis. So I'm going to rotate it on this axis here, which is the green line, which I believe is going to rotate it on the y-axis. And we're going to rotate that until it points down at the ground. And I've deliberately watched the number that I've gone for there, so it's minus 90, which means I've rotated it by a quarter, essentially. And then what I want to do is try and get this fairly central in the room. So I'll change back to my move tool. And then I'm going to try and put this roughly in the middle. That was pretty close. And then finally, we're going to move it up so that it's not too close and so that it is lighting everything a bit more evenly. Now that we've got the light, there are a few settings about it that we can change as well. So we've got a source width and height. So that's kind of the shape that the light is. And if you imagine it like a window where light floods through, or like a screen, like a monitor or a TV, that's kind of how this light functions. And you can make that screen or window bigger or smaller. And for this room, and because it creates softer shadows, I like to change this width and height to 200. So 200 width, 200 height. And you won't see much change here. If you had it closer to your floor, you would have done. But all it's doing really is making it look nicer. The other thing I want to do, because this is a sci-fi environment, is I want this light to look very artificial. And to do that, we're going to add a bit of a blue tint to it. So we've got light colour here, so we'll click on that. We get this colour picker here. And what's good about this is it happens in real time. So as I drag around, I can see what's happening. Bit of a disco going on there. And I'm just going to drag it, and you can see it mostly happens at the edges first. So I'm going to drag it so that the edges just go a bit blue, like that. That looks nice. And then I'll click on OK to save that. And that will do it for this step. So we've now added a light. I've also introduced you to the almighty rotation tool. And we've changed some of the settings of the light, including the size of it and also the colour. We will look at some other settings we can change for lights later on. But for now, that will do it. In the next step, we're going to take a look at what we need to do to be able to test this level and have a player run around it. So hopefully you will join me there for that. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Now we have a floor, and we can see the floor because we've added a light. I'd like to be able to run around this level to see how it feels to the player. And we need to set up a couple of things to allow that to happen. So I'll show you what we're going to do first. So I want to be able to run around, and I'm deliberately going to do this wrong first. So if I were you, I wouldn't copy this. But the way that we do it is we press play here, and that will play the level in the active viewport, which is here. And when I press play, what's going to happen is my player just kind of dropped past the floor and will now fall forever, which is sad. And then we need to know a few things as well to get out of this. So we can click on stop to stop the simulation. But if you've clicked in here, you now can't get your mouse out because you're controlling the camera in the game. So you can either press Shift and F1 to regain mouse control, which is good, or you can just press Escape and that will end the simulation, which is how you get out of it as well. So I am now very far away from my level. I'm kind of lost in the middle of nowhere. And rather than just try and find my way back by controlling the camera, that would be nuts, I'm just going to select something from my outliner, the Rectolight will do, and then I'm going to press F, and then it will just reframe my camera and put me back where I should be. So I'm going to show you why that went wrong. So it was essentially because I wasn't over the floor. And if we click on this here, change play mode and play settings, When we spawn a player, they'll spawn at the current camera location, which I fell then because my camera wasn't over the floor. And you can see there is an option to do default player start, but it's not available to us yet. So if I click on play now, you can see that the camera was in place, the collisions are working, and the player can run around. That's good, that's brilliant. But I've still got no control over where that player is going to start, other than putting my camera in place. So we're going to add what's called a player start, and then that will allow us to make the player start exactly where we want them to every time. We do that by clicking here. And this time, instead of searching through the menus for this, if you just start typing player like that, it will do a search in all the menus, and then you've got player start. So I'm just going to drag that into my level like that. And I've dragged it on purpose because I know when I do that, it will give me this bad size warning. And what that's really telling me is that it's just intersecting the floor. And Unreal Engine's worried about the collisions, so it says, hey, why don't you drag it out of the floor? And I say, good idea. So we've done that. And then the other thing to be aware of is that there is a direction on this. It's the way that the player faces. So if I just go to my selection tool, you can see that this blue arrow is the way the player will face when the game starts. So what we will do then is move this to about here so that the player can see most of the room. We'll put it fairly central as well. You can see most of the room in front of them when the game starts. So now I'll just deliberately put my camera out over the void, and then we'll press play. And you'll see that the player has started where we just put the player start, which is useful. And now we can run around. And in case you need to know this, your default controls for this default character are W, A, S, and D. And then you control with your mouse the direction that you're facing as well. By default, we've also been given this default character who is known as Quinn. She is one of the two default Unreal Engine 5 mannequin characters. There's also another one called Manny, who's a male version of this. We might look at how we change those later, but for now, Quinn will do. She's perfect for our needs. So I'll press escape and just zoom out a little bit. So we're now ready to continue to test this level. As we move forward, as we make changes, we can quickly figure out how this looks and feels to the player. In the next step then, we're going to put some walls in to stop the player from just running off the end of the level, which is not what we're going for. So I'll see you in the next step for that one. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. This step then is all about getting walls put around our level to encase the player and to make the level look more complete. So let's have a look at that. The first thing we'll need to do is bring in some more of the static meshes that we downloaded earlier. So let's set about doing that. So I'll open my content drawer. I'm going to right click in some empty space and click on import, which is up at the top. Okay, this time we're going to bring in 3 meshes at once, and I'm going to need to select more than one object. So the way I'll do that is I'll get back wall first. So I just clicked on that once. And then to select the next one, which is going to be wall panels, I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard, left click, and that will add to my selection. And I'll do that one more time, Control and left click for wall sci-fi. So back wall, wall panels, wall sci-fi are the 3 meshes that we need. And we'll click on open. The settings should be fine because Unreal Engine remembers the settings, and we've already done it with the floor. So it's generating missing collision, it's combining meshes, and it is not creating new materials. So then we can just click on import all. There we go. And we've got our 3 meshes. And now you can see they've all got asterisks because they've not been saved yet. So we need to go through and add the materials and save each one of these. So we'll start with the back wall. And while we're looking at this one, I will show you something that I tend to do. So I don't like having this as a separate window that you have to open and close. I like it to be part of my main Unreal Engine interface. And the way I do that is I grab this tab here, tear it away, and then I dock it alongside the level. And now I find it a lot easier to work between assets and the game itself. Anyways, so we've done that, and we need to put some materials on this. So I'm going to start by highlighting. So this here, in this case, is like the accent colour. So what we're going to do is give that the basic floor colour, which is the blue. And the other one's going to have the asset platform, which is kind of this industrial grey colour. And we'll save that. And then I'm going to go back to the level here, open my content browser, and we'll go for wall panels. This one's got two materials again, but these nuts and bolts, I want to have like a metallic element to them. So you can see they're material 2 when I highlight them. So we're going to just do a search for chrome. And we've got an M_metal chrome for this, so we'll choose that, and that's going to make those look pretty sexy. And then the other one's going to have that asset platform industrial grey colour going on. Very nice. So that's 2 done. You can see I'm just leaving them open up here in case I want to come back, change any materials or anything. And then the final one is the wall sci-fi. There it is. And we're going to work out which ones we've got. So this one here is the accent colour. So we're going to make that one basic floor, give that the blue tint. This one here is the industrial grey, I believe. So let's see if I like that one. Yes, I do. And we've got a pipe down here. Let's just highlight that. And we're going to give this one what's called, what is it? Brushed nickel. So there we go. That gives it a nice metallic little thing going on there. And save. So we've now brought in all 3 of these and applied their material. So I can now close their static mesh editor windows. We'll start by adding the back wall then, which is here. And this one goes behind the player. So I'm just going to drop this into my level. I'm going to set it to 0, 0, 0. Maybe I'm not actually. Well, we'll set it to that. That just means that I get it all zeroed where I want it. I'm then going to go to my rotate tool and rotate it 90 degrees on this axis. And then back to my move tool, and I'm going to move it back like that. You see my snaps are still set to 50, so everything's going to line up properly. And then we're going to move it across here. And you can see once it's in line here, it's still got some overhang over here, which is intentional. But we're just going to even that out by moving it over a couple more. So it's still pretty centered. There we go. So that's the back wall in place. Next, we're going to add a wall over here. For that one, we're going to have the SM wall panels. So we'll just drop that in like that. I'm going to set it to 0, 0, 0. So I know roughly where I am. Then I'm going to move it back and move it across until it joins up here. So that's good. And then you can see this doesn't go all the way over like the back wall did. So I need to duplicate this. So Alt on my keyboard, and then I'm going to drag on the move tool and put that in place like that. So that's now that wall complete, starting to look pretty nice. And then we're going to bring in the sci-fi wall over here. So here it is. I'm just going to drop that there, and you can see it's probably worth pointing this out. These walls are one-sided, so when you look at them from that angle, they're see-through. When you look at them from the correct angle, they're not see-through, which is pretty standard game development stuff. So don't worry about that. That's how it should be. Okay, so I need to get this one rotated and put into place. So I'm now going to start using my keyboard shortcuts for these tools. So it's E on my keyboard for the rotate tool, and we'll rotate it by 90 degrees. And then W on my keyboard for the move tool. And then we're going to move that back into place and over here. Really good. And then we need a copy of that. So I'm going to do Alt and drag over here and put it there. And one thing that we need to think about here is if you watch this pipe, it kind of runs up here at an angle, but then sort of stops. And it's like, you could argue maybe something's happening in these wall pieces here, but it would just be easier if we flipped the wall piece to make it look like that pipe continues. And we can do that with the scale tool. So I'll put my scale tool on, which is this one here. We've not really used it yet. So I'll click on it there. And I'm just going to drag on this axis here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to see which numbers are moving over here. And I can see it's the middle one. And so I'll put it back to its proper size, 1. And if we make it -1, so if we invert that, it will flip the asset. And then if I go back to my move tool and move it back into place, you can see that pipe now continues through. And that's what we wanted. So what we need to do now is create one more copy because I want one here. And then we'll be about done with the walls. So I'm going to do rotate tool this time. I'm going to do Alt and rotate it by 90 degrees here. I'm going to move it back into place, which is there. And then you can see I've got the problem with the pipe again. So instead of being -1 on the scale, we'll make it 1. Oh, hello. And then I need to just reposition that again. There we go. And I'm going to press escape to deselect it. Okay, that to me it looks like all the walls are now in place. We're just going to leave a gap over here because that's where the door is going to go later. And we'll just test it with the player to see how this feels. So walls feel nice and high and imposing. We can't get through them, which is always a good sign. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So I'll just hit escape to get out of there. And we can wrap this step up. So we've brought in some more meshes. We've reinforced the learning of adding materials using the static mesh editor. I've also introduced you to the rotate and the scale tools. So that's good learning too. And in the next step, we're going to reinforce that learning further by adding some more meshes. And we're also going to have another pass at some lighting to make the new meshes that we're bringing look even more interesting. So I will see you in the next step where we make our floor look sexier than it already does. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step, we're going to do some more interesting stuff around duplication, bringing in another mesh and some lighting things to create like a more interesting floor. We're going to create like a sub floor with some lights underneath. It's going to look very cool. So we'll start by importing another 3D asset. So we're going to go to import here. And the one that we want this time is called floor_mesh. Let's open that up. The settings are all fine, so we can click on import there. And then let's open that up in the static mesh editor. There it is, and I'm just going to dock it up here. And then this time the material I want is steel, M_metal steel. Try the burnished steel if you want. I didn't like it, but we'll do that one. So that looks pretty nifty. And that's everything for this one. So I can click on save and we'll close it. And then I'm going to drop it in my level somewhere like so. And then I'm going to set it to 0, 0, 0 because that's just a good idea. And then I'll press F to frame it up like that. And one thing that I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to just scale it down because this one looks better when it's tiled more, in my opinion. So I'm just going to put my scale tool on. I'm going to press R on my keyboard this time. And then I'm going to scale it down to 0.5 there. And you'll notice that I scaled from the center there when I did that. If I just undo it, if I scale on one of these axes, you see it just does it on one at a time, which I don't really want in this case. So I'll scale from the middle and it does both axes at once. So 0.5, and then I'm going to drop it right in the corner here. And then you'll notice we've got this little shimmering effect going on. That's because it's intersecting with the other floor. So I'm just going to drag it up by 1. So that's 50 units because my snaps are still on 50. And then it's time to start duplicating this bad boy across the whole level. So that's the same as it was earlier. I'm going to hold Alt and Shift, and that's going to allow me to create a whole row of these pieces real quick. Pieces. I'm going to select them all up here. So click on the top one, hold Shift and click on the bottom one. I've then got them all. Change my view so that I'm over here. I can see what I'm doing, and then it's going to be Shift and Alt again. And I'm going to repeat this until I have an entire floor made out of these kind of great mesh materially things. There we go. So let's see how that looks to the player. Ooh, very nice. Very industrial. So that's good, but the problem is, now that we've done that, even though there are holes in this floor, we can't see that there's anything below it. Or it's very hard to see that there's anything below it. So in order to really highlight that fact, we're going to drop some lights under the floor. It's going to be very moody. So let's just press escape and then we can have a look at what we do for that. Okay, so we're going to create a point light this time, which kind of operates like a light bulb or like a sun. So light comes out in every direction, which is good. So I'm just going to go to my create quickly, go to lights, and I'm going to click on point light. That'll put it somewhere central. Here it is. I'm just going to bring it up like that. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit, because what's important here, or one of the first things we're going to change, is these big circles here are how far that light will go. It's called the attenuation radius. And it's a bit technical, but when we do a light build later, if you have too many lights overlapping, Unreal Engine doesn't include them in the light build. So we need to keep that attenuation radius down to stop that from being a problem. The way that I'm going to do that is, here's attenuation radius in my details panel, and I'm just going to drag the number until that comes down to about, let's call it 350. That looks good. And then what I want to do is place this under the floor. Now I'm going to struggle with this, I'll show you why. So if I drop this down, that's it kind of in line with the metallic floor. And if I drop it down again, it's now in line with the other floor. I need it to be in between these 2 points. And because the snaps are at 50, that won't happen. So I'm going to change the snapping to 10. And then I'm going to bring it down 1, 2, 3 times. And then it now fits between those 2 bits of floor. And I'll leave it on 10 for the time being, just while I'm fine-tuning the position of this. So I'm going to drop it in the back corner over here, and it's important to me that it sort of hits the walls a little bit. That's what makes it look cool. So we've got that. I want it to have a colour, so we're going to set the colour to red, and we're just going to intensity of this to 1. So the intensity is measured in candelas. The intensity is measured in candelas, and it's currently set to 8. I'm going to set it to 1, and that just stops it from being too overpowering. So that's now pretty much done. The only other thing I need to change is it's casting shadows, so the floor is creating these ugly shadows here. And because this light's only for effect and is not really meant to be a main light source in the level, we can turn shadows off and it'll still look fine. So while it's still selected, we're going to scroll down in the details panel. Here is casts shadows, and we'll make that false. And you can see that those lines go away when we do that. So that's good. That's 1 point light. So we are now going to duplicate it. In fact, I'm just going to move it. I want it in this corner here first, because I want a red one by the door, essentially. So I'm going to put one there. I'm then going to hold Alt on my keyboard to create a duplicate of that, and put that one over here near where the door is going to be. That's good. And then I'm going to duplicate it again, Alt and click, and put it sort of where I started. But this one I want to have a blue tint to it, just to create a bit of sort of visual contrast with the colours. Just being creative, really. And then we'll do one more copy. So let's move it here and here. And I'm not going to keep them perfectly in line. Okay, let's see how this looks to the player. So press play. So yeah, now that looks good. You can see that the lights themselves are hitting the player character, which happens to be a bit reflective, which looks nice. And as we run around the room, we can see now that there's kind of something under those floor tiles, which feels pretty high-end, pretty sci-fi. So I'm happy with that as well. Okay, so that wraps up this step then. So we've looked at lighting again, we've changed some more settings, we've done the attenuation radius and the intensity. And in the next step, we are going to sort this gap out here and put a door frame in there, and we're going to do that by using some other bits and pieces creatively, because this is quite a non-standard shape to fill. So we'll get that sorted there. So see you in the next step. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. When we start adding some interactivity to this game, one of the things that we're going to want to be able to do is open a door so that our robot can kind of escape this room. And we can't do that until we have a door. So that's what this step's going to cover. So let's have a look at importing that mesh then. So we're going to right click and import to game meshes. And there are a couple of meshes we need to import for this step. We're going to have door frame, and then I'm going to hold control and click on trim wall. And we're going to use that to fill any gaps that we can't otherwise fill. So click on open. Now, this one we've got to be careful about. So the door frame here, we have to change some settings because of the way that collisions work. So this time we're not going to have it generate missing collisions on this one because I've created a collision mesh for this one. And because we've got a hole in the middle, if we had a collision that went around the whole thing, we'd get stuck on the door. And there's a very specific collision that we need for this. And that means we've got to change another setting as well. And it's this one here, one convex hull per UCX needs to be turned off for this, only this one mesh. And that's because it's actually made up of 4 collision meshes, 2 on the sides and 2 on the top. And that's just how collisions with holes have to work in Unreal Engine. So we need to change those 2 settings. Everything else can stay the same, but those 2 need to be changed. So we'll click on import, and that'll import the door frame. And I didn't click on import all there, just import. Because now for the trim wall, we need to turn generate missing collisions back on. And also we're going to have one convex hull back on as well. So it was just for the door frame we needed to change those settings. And then we'll click on import again. So we've now got our 2 meshes. So we're going to open the door first of all. We're going to put the nickel material on it. So if we go to show and simple collision, we've got a cube that goes down here, and simple collision, we've got a cube that goes down here, a cube that goes down here, 1 across the top and 1 across the top. And that's 4 separate shapes, and they had to stay that way for this to work. So we can just turn that off and save. So that's the door frame done. And then the trim wall has 2 materials. So let's go to highlight. So that's the main material. I don't know what that is actually. Let's go for the other one. So that's the one that's in between. Yeah, okay. So this top one is going to be the nickel material. Very, very, very nice. And then the gap in between is, there's this one called hex, and there's 2 of them. So there's M hex tile, which is this guy, which looks kind of, oh, hello, I've got lost. Which looks very cool and very sci-fi. There you go. And if you want to go even more sci-fi than that, there's hex tile pulse, which is the same material but it has like a pulsing light behind them, which is the one I'm going to use because it looks sick. So let's click on save there. We can close both of those, and we'll have a look at putting this doorway in. So I'm going to put the door in first, and you'll see that because of the way that the pivot is set, which is at the middle, it's kind of getting stuck beneath the floor, which is not what I wanted. And I'm going to show you a little trick here. So I'm going to raise it up above the floor, and once I've done that, I'm just going to set my, in fact, I'll set it back to 50 for now. And then what I want to do is get this lined up with the floor. Now, because of the way this is built, it won't work, look, because we're on 50 snaps and it goes below. So what I can do instead is if you put something above the ground and then press the end key on your keyboard, it will then just go down until it hits something and get it lined up. So that's really cool. So now the door's lined up with the ground. So then I'm going to rotate this around and then put it roughly in place. In a minute, you just need to be close. Okay, we're going to get a gap here. A gap, you just need to be close. Okay, we're going to get a gap here, and also a gap over the top of this door. We'll sort the top one out first, and we're going to do it by getting another one of these. And we're just going to make it smaller. So I'm going to hold Alt and put my rotate tool on and create the copy of it. I'm then going to move it into place, which is there, I do believe. Oh, I've gone too far. There it is. And then I'm going to scale it down 1, 2 to 0.5. And I'm going to move it over here. So it doesn't matter that I leave a gap there, because there's actually another mesh. Hang on, am I behind it? No, yeah, I'm not. So there's another mesh that's going to cover that up later, so I don't need to worry too much about that. But I do need to worry about this kind of top area. And you can see that it does line up with the height there, so that's good. And then we've got a gap here that we need to fill. I've not got a mesh yet that will do that, so that's where we're going to use that trim piece, which is this guy here. Here he is. Drag him out of the floor, rotate him around this way, and then I'm going to rotate him this way. And now I'm going to cheat a little bit, because I've done this before. I know a change that I need to make to this particular asset, and that's that the width of it on this axis here needs to be 1.25. So 1.25. Otherwise everything doesn't line up properly. So I can then move this to be in line with the other stuff, and it's not going to fit perfectly yet until we put the snaps down to 10. And I've just got to move it forward here. It's got to be in line there. You see that doesn't fit, so I'll change the snapping to 10. Oh, that's 5. Maybe 5 actually. We'll leave it on 5. That looks good. So you can see that's there now. I'm now going to create a copy of this on the other side. In fact, before I create a copy of it, I'm just going to make sure it goes down to the bottom. It does, yeah. So Alt, and we're going to put one on this side. I might have to fine tune this. Oh, hello. In a minute. But that looks pretty good there. Yep. And then the doorway needs to go back to about there. And I can now see that that's intersecting too much. So I'm going to move the door over just one. I'm going to have them intersecting a little bit, and move this trim over one as well. And that looks pretty good. I just need this trim to continue up, so I'll select both of these, hold Alt on my keyboard. In fact, let's just change my snaps back to 50 before I do this. And then I'm just going to move these up like that. And that is good to go. So I'm just going to hit play quickly and check that everything's behaving itself. So I'm just going to make sure that I can get through the door. If I go too far, I'll fall off the end of the world. So I'm not going to do that. But my player can get through the wall there. All the other collisions are working as expected. As I said, we're going to sort this corner out in a sec. We've got another piece to bring in for that. So that's what we're going to do in the next step. So we're going to bring in the corner piece, which is a corner trim. We're going to bring some decoration in for this wall here to make this look nicer and get closer to finishing this level and finishing this chapter. So I'll see you in the next step, where we're going to bring in the final couple of meshes and finish this level. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you're eager to dive deeper into game development with Unreal Engine 5, I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I highly recommend checking out the course Unreal Engine 5 The Complete Beginner's Course by David Nixon on Udemy. It's a comprehensive and beginner-friendly course that covers all the essential aspects of working with Unreal Engine 5. I personally found it to be an excellent resource, and I'm sure you'll benefit from it too. Check it out by following my link in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step then, we're finally going to make this level watertight, make sure the player can't find any ways to get out by bringing in the final few pieces, make it look pretty. We're also going to put a ceiling on there as well. So let's have a little look at how we do that. We're going to just bring in 2 more meshes. So let's go to import. We now want the fence and we want the trim corner. So we'll open both of those. I'm just going to check my settings because we did change them a little bit in the last step. So generate missing collision is on, 1 convex hull is on, combine is on, and materials do not create. Yep, that's good. So I can click on import all. Then we need to open these up and get the materials on. So we'll do the fence first. This one has that steel material on. Lovely, and save that. And then the other one is the corner. This one's got 3 materials on, so I'm going to highlight this one. That's the accent colour, so we're going to make that one blue. In fact, I'm not going to do that. I might invert this. So we're going to make this one the industrial grey colour, And then this one's, nope, this one's going to be chrome, because it's just these shiny boxes here. And then this last one's going to be blue. And the reason I'm sort of inverting the colours is to make that stand out against the rest of the pieces there. So that's good. And save. Right, so the first thing we want is this corner sorting out. So I'm just going to make sure my snaps are on 50. They are. That just means it'll all line up nicely. Bring a piece in. I'm going to rotate it so that it faces this way. Make sure that everything is a multiple of 50 here. So yeah, 350, 250, and that means it will all just line up nicely. So I'm going to move it over here, like that, and then move it over here. And then I'm going to drag it down below the ground as well. Perfect. And you can see that it is covering up all the gaps. I knew that was going to happen because I made these pieces. And then we need to make a couple more copies to get this to go all the way up. So I'm going to do Alt and click to bring it up here. And then there is a problem. You can see that, in fact, it's fine actually. I could leave it like that. But I'm going to invert the height just so that things match up a little bit better. So let's just drag it down on this axis, and I can see that it's this one that's changing, so that'll be -1. And then we're going to move this up like that. That's nice, and you see that line then just continues on. It's not a big deal, but you know, it's there. And then I'm just going to duplicate this one up again. So it doesn't matter that things go up at different heights. Let's just go into unlit mode a sec. See, things are at different heights, but we're going to use the ceiling in a minute to kind of close that off. So don't worry about getting things exact, because that's just not how game artists work. As far as they're concerned, if you can't see it, it's not a problem. So we're going to follow that exact message there. So that now looks good. We're going to get a copy of them. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to hold Alt and click. And then we're going to rotate them. Oh, did I go too far? Too far? I did. Put that back. Yeah, that's good. And then just move it into place there. Make sure that looks lined up. It does. See how that looks to the player. What do you think, player? Does that look good? Player thinks it looks very good. Player's very happy. Cool. So that now looks pretty special. We just need a ceiling now. And we're going to cheat for the ceiling, because I love cheating. So here's what we do. You see these floor pieces here? I'm going to find this. I just clicked on one. So it's SM floor. And it's number 1 here. So I'm going to click on number 1. I know there are 20 pieces, so I'm going to go to number 20. Hold shift and click, and that will select all of them. And this is going to become our ceiling. So I'll hold Alt and click to move it up. So there is about the right height, I believe. But one thing to remember is that these are one-sided. So you can see I can see through them at the moment. So we need to flip the height. And that is going to be, I can see it's on the blue axis, which is Z. So the scale is going to become -1. And then you can now see that I can see things. Yay! So we're pretty much good to go there. Have a look. See what the player can see. So yeah, most of the room's working fine. I am, in a couple of videos time, going to tweak the lighting a little bit, because I don't like that as it's catching those highlights. But because I know I'm going to sort it later, I'll leave it for now. Everything below the ceiling looks good. Everything's watertight. Player can get through the door. Wonderful. So in the next step, we're going to look at the outliner. So we've now got dozens of meshes and things. It's getting a bit messy, so we're going to bring that under control. So I will see you in the next step where we will do that. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, nice to see you again. In this step then, as I promised, we are going to look at sorting out our outliner. So the first thing I'm going to do for that is just make it a bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to resize my windows a little bit there. And we're going to sort these into folders within the outliner. And we're going to start with the floor. So I'm going to get static mesh floor 1, which as we can see is that one over there. I'll just press F. There it is, look, that piece there. And then I'm going to get all the way up to 20. Now, because we duplicated them to the ceiling, that goes beyond 20 now, but I know that the floor only goes up to 20. So I'll select all of those. And then there's a little folder icon up here. We'll click on that, and that will create a new folder and put all those meshes in it. So if I just collapse that folder now, you can see that those meshes are in there. And then I'm going to rename that folder so that I know what's in it. So right click, go to edit and rename. And I'm going to call this one subfloor. Nice. Let's get all of these pieces. So these are called floor mesh. So I'm going to get the first one. I'll find the last one. I think there are 80 of these. There are. So hold shift, click on the last one. I've now got all pieces of that floor. So click on folder. I'm going to rename that to floor. And then I can collapse that folder. So I've now got 2 folders. You can see this is now starting to get much more sorted out. Next, I've got the other floors, but these ones are up here. So they're actually my ceiling. So I'll select all of those pieces. New folder. This one's going to be called ceiling. And then we'll collapse that. It's going to be called ceiling. And then we'll collapse that. And then I want another one for walls, essentially. So we've got back wall. We'll include the door frame in this one as well. The trim can go in there as well. All the walls, wall panels, yep. Wall sci-fi. So that's all of those. So I'll create a new folder for that, and I'm going to call this folder. So let's just rename walls and door. And then collapse that. You can see now I've got very little left, just the lights basically. So let's select all of those. We'll put those in a folder and we'll rename it. And this one is going to be called lights and effects. I will collapse that, and we're going to leave the player start out because that's the gameplay thing really. So I'm not going to put that into like level folders. And then we can do one more thing just to really organize this, ready for if we have more levels later, is select all 5 of these folders, put them in a folder, and this folder is going to be called, what's it going to be called? I'm going to call it storeroom. Like that. And then I can collapse that down to just one folder and a player start. So that is how we organize our outliner, and we're done. Yay! So we've got one more step in chapter 2, which is just to have one more pass at the lighting. We're going to polish that a little bit, make sure that the lighting behaves as we expect it to, and we're doing pretty well. We're making good progress. So let's move on to the next step. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step then, now that the level's just about done, we're going to make the lighting a little bit better and get it under control. And I'm going to show you why we need to get it under control first of all. And I'm going to do that by coming outside of my room and just staring off into the void. And then I'm going to look back at my room. You can see it's all really dark, and then it starts to get brighter over time. If I just do that again, look. So look over here for a sec, look back, and it's gone really dark. And why I've done that, why I've shown you that, is I'm just highlighting the fact that currently Unreal Engine is using auto exposure. So it doesn't matter what we set the lighting levels to really, because it's just going to correct for them. So what we need to do is tell it not to do that, or rein in the parameters of that. One way of doing that is if where it says lit up here, it's currently on game settings. If we turn that off, and you can now see it's at a setting of EV1, this is now real dark, which is what we want. This is kind of what the lighting looks like if you don't auto expose for it. So that's better. And we're going to bring it under that level of control ourselves. So let's just go back to game settings for a minute. And you can see now that lighting comes back up. And we're going to control that with a post-process volume. So we're going to go up here to create one. So it lives in volumes, and it's down here, post-process volume, and you can drag it anywhere. Now it's a volume because generally whatever effects you make for this happen inside that volume, but we want this to happen everywhere, so we're going to give it infinite extent. So I'm just going to resize my workspace a little bit, and then I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm looking for, it's near the bottom. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. So under post-process volume settings, I'm going to tick the box for infinite extent. So now it will happen inside this cube and outside it as well. So now that I've done that, I'm going to move the cube out to the side because it doesn't need to be in there. It'll just get in the way. But as long as I've got it selected, I can change the settings for it. So then what I'm going to do is find the exposure area of this. Where are we? So I'm just going to collapse some of this. So I don't need to be doing a lens. I don't need color grading. Don't need film. Don't need global illuminations or reflections or rendering features or film grain or path tracing. Hang on, where's exposure? Okay, I got a little bit excited then. It's actually in the lens settings, my mistake, and it's in this exposure here. So third one down, exposure. And we're going to tick the boxes for min and max EV100. And we're just going to set the parameters for that. So I'm going to set the minimum to 1 and the maximum to 0. And you see that it will now allow it to go between those two values, and we now get a much moodier scene. Now that we've got that level of control, it's a good time to dial those values in. So we're going to go into our folder up here. Let's just make sure I can see what I'm doing. Into lights and effects and get the rect light. And we're going to change the intensity. So I am going to bring it up a little bit. Let's see where I want it to be. About there. So I've got it set to about 28. So let's just press play and see how that looks to the player. Yeah, I think that's nice. So now it's not overpowering. It's pretty good. I think I might just take it a little bit lower. Let's try 25. Yeah, I like that. So it looks kind of moody. That's good. Okay, the next thing I want to do with that light then is I'm going to bring it down a touch. So I'm just going to put my snaps down to about 10 for this and just bring it down slightly. I don't want it to be hitting that ceiling, which is now not hitting, so that's good. And that stops those kind of really harsh highlights that we had before. But we've now got another problem if we press play, and that is that it looks like there is no ceiling. And that might be something that you want. That's absolutely fine. But I do want the player to see that there's a ceiling there. And what we can do is use bounce lighting. So in real world, if you have lights shining down, it'll bounce and then illuminate back up there anyway. And that's currently not happening here. And we do that, or one of the ways that we can do that is through building lighting. And that will bounce the lighting around the scene for us. So we will do that now. The way we do it, and we're just going to do a test one really, is go to build up here. And then the second option in that menu is build lighting only. And I'm going to click on that now. And this can take different amounts of time depending on how big your level is, how many assets are in your level, what resolution you have your light maps set to, and how good your PC is. Now luckily we've only got a few pieces, it's a small level, so it's not going to take too long. You can see that as I'm talking to you, this process is happening on screen. It's now almost up to 100%. It updates some stuff and it pops in. There you go. So I've now got bounce lighting on the ceiling. So if I press play now, hey, we're good. We have now got our first level. Look at you. You've gone from knowing nothing to being able to make an entire level in Unreal Engine. Well done, you. So this would now be a really good time to save your work before moving on. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do File, Save Current Level As, and I'm just going to give this a new name. So I'm going to call it Ship Level 3 Begin. Because this is now ready to begin. In fact, not Level 3, Chapter 3. Chapter 3 Begin. Because this is now ready for when we move on to the next chapter. So if you choose to download my assets so that you can work through it, you will want to have that available. So that's available for you. You should save yours as well. One thing you will notice though as you save it is that it does discard the light build information. Who knows why it happens. But you might just want to build that again. So I'm just going to click on build lighting and then we're good. So we have in this chapter brought in assets, looked at how we can add materials to those assets. We've conquered the move, rotate and scale tools. We've learned how to duplicate. We've imported lights. We've changed the properties of those lights. We've built lighting. We've done it all. We are pretty good at this. And we even, try to get our head around things like collisions and stuff. So well done for making it through chapter 2, and get ready for chapter 3, which will be coming up in the next step. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step, I'm going to be setting you your first challenge of the course. So in between each chapter, I'm going to set you a small challenge as an opportunity to consolidate your learning and also to maybe be a little bit creative too. So if you look at my screen here, you can see that I've put these things up on the wall. And if you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed that we've imported those in an earlier step, but we've done nothing with them. That's because it's your challenge. So what I want you to do is get a material on these guys here, place them somewhere in your level and make sure you're happy with them. They don't have to be along this wall like they are in my case. They can be wherever you want. I've also just added a bit more detail into this corner as well. I moved this pillar over here, duplicated it. You might want to do that. So just finishing touches to your room, ready for the next chapter where we're going to add in some interactivity. So I'll see you in the next step where we're going to start making it a game. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this chapter, we're going to start adding some gameplay and interactivity to our project, and in doing that we'll be using Blueprints, which is Unreal Engine's visual scripting language, and in my opinion, one of its most powerful features. So what exactly are Blueprints? Well, in simple terms, Blueprints are a visual scripting system within Unreal Engine that allow you to create gameplay, mechanics, interactions, and behaviours without writing a single line of code. Think of them as a way to design the logic and functionality of your game using a node-based interface, making game development accessible to both artists and programmers. Blueprints work by connecting nodes together to define the flow of logic in your game. Each node represents a specific action, event or condition, and you can link them together to create complex behaviours. Think of it like putting together pieces of a puzzle to bring your game to life. Blueprints can be used for almost anything in your game, from controlling character movement and animation to creating interactive objects, implementing AI behaviours, designing user interfaces, and even managing game progression and saving systems. The possibilities with this system are virtually endless. So let's open up a blueprint so I can give you a little tour of the blueprint editor. So we're going to take a look at the third person blueprint because we're going to be using this as we go through this chapter anyway. So in order to find that, we're just going to go into our content folder. So you can see I've just opened my level, so I'm going to go here. There is already a third person folder which was created when we started with the template earlier in the exercise. So if we go into there, there's a blueprints folder in there, and then this here is the third person character blueprint, and it's got a BP at the beginning that sort of denotes that that's what it is. So let's just open that up. Okay, here it is. I'm just going to dock it alongside here so that I can see everything that I want to see. And then we'll talk about all the bits and bobs in here. So up here at the top, you've got the menu bar, which is specific to whichever window or tab you have open. Next, we have the toolbar, which has a range of commonly used features such as save, compile, class settings, class defaults, and your play controls as well. This window here in the top left is components, and it lists all of the individual components which make up your blueprint. In this case, we have a capsule component, we have an arrow component, a mesh, and also a camera boom and a follow camera. And then just below that, you've also got the character movement, which we can use to edit the character movement. Down below all that, we have the My Blueprint window. This includes a tree list of all the graphed scripts, functions, macros, and variables. It's basically an outline of the blueprint where you can see all of the existing elements of it and also create new ones. This big area here in the middle is the graph editor, and this is really the heart of the blueprint system. This is where you create and organize the networks of nodes that will make up the logic of your games. So here you can see the logic for the jump. And we've got a few notes here. So we've got an enhanced input action. So this is when the jump action is triggered, it will do one of two things. So when you trigger it, it will begin the jump event. And when it's completed, it will do the stop jumping event. This is quite a simple one, just to get an idea of how these are built. You can also go up the top of this area here and go to the viewport. And this displays all of the different components in a little 3D space, a little viewport, so you can see everything there. So we've got our mesh, the capsule, we've got the camera, and the camera boom is not visible until we select it, but that's there as well. Finally, over here on the right, you have the details panel, which will display and allow you to change properties for anything that you've got selected. And that concludes our quick whistle-stop tour of the blueprint editor window. You're going to be creating a blueprint of your very own in the next step. We're going to start by making a door that can open in the level. So hopefully I will see you in the next step where we can get blueprinting. So I'll see you there. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, so now that I've explained to you what blueprints are, I'm going to show you quickly what we're going to do with them in this chapter. So as you can see, there's a few bits now going on in this level, which I'll demonstrate for you before we start making the door. So I'm just going to press play up here. Okay, so you can see that there's a door now. We've got this something kind of hidden behind the smoke of the fire. So let's see what happens if we try and escape. So we'll go to the door, and it says door lock, keycard required in the top corner. I'll just show you that again. So it's just at the moment using something called the print string. We're going to add a UI to the game in a later chapter, so we're just keeping it simple for now. So then we look for the keycard. Oh, there it is. But if we just catch the fire on the way through, you can see that in the top left-hand corner there's some health, and that's going down by 10 every second. But we don't want to die, so we're going to pick the keycard up by overlapping it, and then we'll walk to the door. The door now opens because we have the keycard, and if we leave our room, well, it'll reset because we don't actually want to leave the room yet. There's nothing out there. And then one final thing that I'll show you that the game does is if we now leave our character in the fire, what's going to happen when their health reaches 0? Well, they're going to die. And then once they've died, oh no, they're dead. The game will reset so we can resume where we were from. So that's what we're going to be doing in this chapter. And the first step is going to be getting the door to open. So let's get stuck in. Okay, so here we are now back in our level before we added any of that interactivity, and we're going to start putting it together. So the first thing we're going to need is just to bring the door mesh in, which is part of the chapter 3 asset. So I'll just show you in the course resources folder. In chapter 3, we've got these two meshes. So we've got door_small, and we've also got keycard. So we need to make sure that we have those unzipped ready to go. Let's just go back into Unreal Engine. And then we're going to import the door mesh into our folder and just get that set up. So let's go to our meshes folder. I'm going to right click in some empty space and choose import. Then I'll go into my chapter 3 folder, find the door small, click on open. You should be pretty familiar with all this from the last chapter. So I'm just going to check my settings. I don't want to create the material. I don't want to import textures. Everything else looks good. So we'll click on import. And then I just want to put the materials on it before I move on. So here's the door. I'll open that up in the static mesh editor like this. And then you can see there are 4 material slots on this. You can add any materials you want, but I suggest the following. So for this first one, I'm just going to use the floor material. So this M_basic floor. And that just adds these blue accents here. The next one, I'm going to use the brush nickel. And that adds most of this metallic stuff in here. And then this one, I'm actually going to use, I'm going to type the word black. And this material is not meant for this at all, really. But it gives us a black material without us having to make a material. So I'm just going to choose that. So it's called M Lightstage Skybox Black. And it just adds this black area here. And then the last one is going to be basic wall. There it is. And that gives us all the materials we need on our door. So then I can click on save and I can just close that for now. So if we didn't want this door to open, we could just now add that static mesh into the level like we did everything else. But we do want it to open, so we need to do a few more steps before we start bringing this in. So I'm going to go into my content drawer, go to the content folder, and I'm going to create a new folder in here, which I'm going to call Blueprints. I'm now going to go into that folder, and we're going to create our first blueprint. So in order to do that, we're going to right click and we're going to choose Blueprint Class. That's what we need to do. So we'll click on this. There it is. And you can see we've got all these different parent classes that we can choose. And we're going to look at many of these as we go through this course. But for this one, we're going to choose the most basic type, which is an actor. An actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. So we'll click on that. And I'm going to call it BP_door. We can start building it. So here we are in our blueprint editor. And you can see it's got all the same windows that we looked at earlier. And the first thing we want to do is actually add the door mesh in, because at the moment this is completely empty. So up in the components section up here, we're going to click on add, and we're going to choose static mesh. So I'm just going to start typing static, and it'll come up as a suggestion. So there's static mesh. And I'm just going to call it door. Lovely. And then with this, I'm going to go over here in the details for it. And under the static mesh section, we have to tell it that we want it to be the door. So let's search for door. And there are a couple because there is some in the starter content. But I want SM_door_small, which is the one that we've just imported. There it is. Beautiful. The next thing we want to do is set a collision box so that when the player overlaps it, we can have our interactive stuff happen. We're going to have some game logic happen when they overlap. So we need to add a box collision to our blueprint. So what I'm going to do first of all is just click on this BP_door because I don't want this to be a child of the door. So I've gone back up to the top level here. I'm going to click on add and type box, and then box collision comes up as a suggestion. And I'll just leave it called box, that's fine. And then what we want to do is have this so that it extends in front of and behind the door, so it's got like a bigger area to overlap. So I'm going to bring it out in front about that far. I'm just going to roughly match the height of the door, and I'll go slightly wider like that. So that's now giving the player somewhere to overlap as they get close to the door to have it open. And we can always edit this later if it's not big enough. Okay, so let's make this interactive. That's everything we need to add into the blueprint at the moment. So we're going to go to our event graph. Here it is. And it starts off with these 3 events. So we've got event begin play, something that will happen as soon as we press play. Event actor begin overlap, which is kind of like what we want, but not exactly. And there's event tick, which happens every tick. We'll get into what ticks are later. But actually, for what we're doing now, we don't want any of these. So I'm going to delete all 3. Bye. Okay, we want to do something when it specifically happens to this box. So I'm going to click on the box to make sure that when I create a new node, Unreal Engine knows I want it to relate to that node. I'm going to right click in my graph over here. And I'm going to type on component begin. And then this will come up. On component begin overlap. The box is a component, so we're not saying the entire blueprint, just that component, and when something begins overlapping with it. And we get this. And there's lots of different outputs on this, but we don't need to worry about all of them, don't worry. We just need to get this set up to do what we need it to do. And the first thing we need to know is what exactly is overlapping with this box collision. And we want to know if it's the player or not. If it's anything else, we don't want this action to trigger. So we need to do that check first. So the way that we do that is we're looking for other actor. So we're going to drag out of here. So you can just see I clicked on there and dragged out and we get a blue wire. And we now need to do something called casting, which is going to talk to another blueprint. It's going to be that 3rd person blueprint we looked at in the last step. So if I'm just start typing cast to 3rd, and then there are only 2 options, 3rd person character or 3rd person game mode. We want 3rd person character. So it's going to check is the other actor this 3rd person character. That's good. So if that is true, what we want to do next is actually have the door open. So we need to get a reference to the door. And it's actually down here as a component. And what we can do is just get the door. I'm going to drag it in, let go, and you can either get or set something we want to get at the moment, like that. And then from here, what I want to do is set relative location. And this is going to move the door out of the way, basically. And what we can do here, we've got these inputs on this particular node that allow us to do the new location. In Unreal Engine, the one for height is Z, and I want the door to move up. And so if we put in Z, the number 200, what I'm going to do is just connect this up like that. So this up like that. So this white connection here is what's happening. So when this happens, check if it is the third person character. If it fails, we don't want it to do anything, so we'll leave that blank. If it happens, if it is that character, it's going to do this, which is to set the relative location of the door. So now would be a good time to test this out and see if it works. So what we need to do now is save the blueprint, and then whenever we make a change, we have to do something called compile. And at the moment you can see there, it's dirty and it needs to be recompiled. So we'll give that a click, and then it says good to go, which means we haven't made any mistakes. It should just work. So now I'm going to go back to my level. I'm going to get my blueprint. I'm going to place it here. Well, I'm going to try. Bring it out of the floor. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. And then I'm going to place it in the doorway. Down to 5 and see if that will work. That looks like a pretty good fit. So I'm fairly happy with the work. That looks like a pretty good fit. So I'm fairly happy with the location of that door. And then what I want to do is just test it out. So let's press play. And then I'm going to run up to the door. And you can see it's moved up. Now I can see it, which is not really what I wanted to happen. But you can see the door does move up. Now I would also like it to close when I run away, which is not happening. So I've got a couple of changes that I need to make. First of all, it's just going to be, I'm going to move this up here, move it back so that I can't see it through the wall, and then I'm going to move it back down. Just make sure I've got the height right. Yep, that looks okay. I'll test that again. So when I run up to the door, yep, it looks like the door's disappeared, but we know it's just moved up. That's cool. Right, now what we need to do is get this to close. So what we need to do essentially is reverse what's happening here. And that's what we'll do. So we're going to go back to our box collision. I'm going to right click in here, and this is going to be on component end overlap. So when the player stops overlapping that box, we need to check if it's the third person character again. So let's go other actor, cast to third person character. And if it is the third person character, we're going to set the relative location again. Now, what I can do this time is just copy this. So if I press Control and C, and I've copied both parts, move my mouse down here, Control and V to paste. I'm going to connect that up, and I just need to set my relative position back to 0 on Z. And that should now work pretty nicely. So let's compile that. I'll save it as well because that's just good practice. And then we'll have a look at whether or not this opens and closes. Open, close, open, close. Hey, it worked. Okay then, we've now got our first blueprint with actual interactivity and blueprints that works. And we're going to leave it there for this step. But in the next step, we're going to do part 2 of the door. And we're going to get it to open and close smoothly using something called a timeline in the blueprints. So I will see you in the next step where we'll get that set up. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In the last step then, we got a blueprint door that will open and close when our player approaches it or walks away from it. But it just happens immediately and it's a bit confusing. It kind of looks like the door disappears. So in this step, we're going to use a timeline to make this happen smoothly. Okay, so we need to have the blueprint door open. So if it's not already open, open it up. I've still got mine open up here. So we're going to go into it like that. Okay, so we've got it opening and we've got it closing, and it's happening here. But what we want to do now is get this to happen smoothly over about a second, maybe a little bit less than a second. And what I'm going to do is we'll just do it on the opening of the door first. So I'm just going to move this way down here because we need to put some more stuff in here. And what we're also going to do is I'm just going to set that back to 0. And then I'm going to right click on this new location. And I'm going to do what's called split the struct pin. And what that does is it now gives me 3 inputs, one for X, one for Y, and one for Z, instead of just having one for all 3, which gives us a good way of changing only the Z, which is what we want. Let me just... Okay. So what we need to do now is create a new timeline. So I'm going to right click and type timeline. And it's the one at the bottom that says add timeline. There's lots of other timeline things here, but it's add timeline. It's got a little clock icon next to it. There it is. And I'm going to call this door movement. Because that would be bad. Here it is. Here it is. So this is what we're going to do. And at the moment, this doesn't really do anything. We need to double click on it to open it, to give it some values. So let's double click. It opens here, and there's nothing going on yet. So we need to add a track. So there's the track. We're going to add a float track. I'm going to call the float track door movement. $7.5. It's a good amount of time for this. Perfect. Now, how this is a good amount of time for this. Perfect. Now, how this is going to work is we're going to have 2 values, one at the beginning, one at the end, and we're going to change the values over time. So I'm going to right click somewhere in here, and we're going to add a key, which is essentially a keyframe. If you know anything about animation, we use these a lot in animation. And then we get a time value and a value for that. And I want to set both of these to 0. And that says at the beginning of the timeline, I want the value to be 0. Nice. And then at the end of this, I'm going to right click again. We're going to add another key. So this one's going to be at 0.75, which will put it to the end. And the value I would actually like to be 200, which is how much we move the door by, if you remember. I'm then just going to, because we can't see this happening, I'm going to just press the F key. And now we can see that over time, we've got this linear line that starts at 0 and goes to 200, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our event graph, which is just up here, look, next to the door movement. And this is now ready to do some stuff for us. Okay, so once we have figured out that it is the third person character overlapping our door, we're going to want to play something from the start, which is going to be the door movement. And then what we can do is take this update node here, and that's going to get the set relative location doing some stuff. And the door movement here, look, is going to go into new location Z, like that. So that's now going to make this happen over 0.75 seconds. So let's test that out. We're going to compile, save, go back to our level, and we're going to run over to the door. And you can see that now opens smoothly. Now the problem is if we walk away, it just reappears. So we're going to need to reverse what we've done there for when the player ends the overlap. So let's do that. Now we can be a little bit clever with this. So what we're going to do is move this over here. I'm going to split the struct pin again. And what we can do, if you notice on this one here, there is the option to reverse or reverse from the end, which is ideally what we want to do. So we're going to copy this timeline. So Control C and Control V. And this time, instead of playing from the start, we're going to play from the end or reverse from the end, play backwards. And then we're going to update into here. And our door movement's going to go into Z like that. So it's exactly the same, except we're now just reversing it when the overlap ends. So let's now compile and save that and give it a jolly old test. So we're going to run over to the door opens. I like to think it makes a sort of noise, but we'll add audio later. And then we'll walk away, and it closes. It's like it was meant to be. Okay, there's only one final thing I want to change in this step, and I just want the animations to be a little bit smoother. It's a subtle effect, but for me, I just like it. So what we'll do is go back into our blueprint. I'm going to double click on my timeline. And we've got this very straight line. And what I'm going to do is right click on the first keyframe, and I'm going to change the tangent or the interpolation from linear to auto. And you'll see you get a nice gradual curve into it. I'm going to do the same at this end, although I think it's already done, but I'll do it to be safe. There we go. And then that is saved. I'm going to go back into this one as well, because I've now got 2 versions of this. So we need to make that one auto as well, and I'll just make sure that we've got auto over there. Excellent. Save that. And then let's run over to the door one final time and see what happens. Perfect. So that's now a little bit smoother. Run out of the door, and you can see that now my character will fall forever, which is not. And you can see that now my character will fall forever, which is not great in a game. If you have a player accidentally run through a wall because your collisions are broken, you don't want them just to fall forever. You want some kind of fail-safe. So in the next step, that's what we're going to do. Let me just go back into my room. We're going to make it so that when the player leaves the room, that they'll die and the game will be reset. So I will see you in the next step where we'll get that set up. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. We are making some incredible progress, but we now want to make sure that when our player falls out of the level, that something happens and they don't just fall forever. So there is actually a really good way of doing this. So if we have a look so over here, we're normally in the details panel here, but there is also a world settings. And within that, we've got this guy here, which is called the Kill Z. And that means that when you go down a particular height, so actually when I'd said in the previous step that we would fall forever, we wouldn't. Eventually, our actor would be destroyed, our player would be destroyed when it reaches this depth, if you want to call it that. So what I'm going to do is set this to just not as big of a number because it'll take a long time to fall to that. So I'm going to do -500. So I've just gone into world settings, found Kill Z and set it to -500. And then I'm going to demonstrate what that does for you. So if we now go through the door, there we go, and then I jump out, I got so far down and then my player was destroyed, but nothing's actually happened. I'm still stuck. I can't play the game anymore. So I have to press escape and come out of that. And I'm just going to find my room again. Here it is. So what we need to do now is have something happen when our actor gets destroyed, like reset the game. And that's what we'll do. So what we need to do is, in our content drawer, I'm going to go up to the top level, go into third person, because we need to go into the player blueprint now. So into blueprints and third person. And there's already some events here, but what we're going to do is add a new event just at the bottom. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to add one for destroyed. So event destroyed. So what this means is when the player is destroyed, what would you like to happen? And I'd like it to reload the level. So I'm going to come out of here and I'm going to start typing open level by name. And then this is really, really important. It will open the level, but we have to type it exactly right for this to work. And the level name, for me, I can see it's up here. So as I'm saving versions of this as I go through, so that you can access them as part of the resource pack, this might change. But at the moment, it's called Ship Chapter 3 Begin Version 2. So I need to type that in exactly as it appears here. So it's called Ship. Oh, let's get rid of that none and zoom in a little bit so you can see. So Ship Chapter 3 Begin V2. Now I don't need the asterisk because that's just an asterisk telling me that I've not saved my level in a while. But that's the name of it. Ship Chapter 3 Begin V2. Now, 2 things to remember is A, get your spelling right, and B, get your capitalization right. This should be identical for it to work. So I'll just now compile and save my blueprint. And let's give that a go. So we're going to run through the door. Door opens and we're going to run into the abyss. And it put me right back where I started. And I can repeat that again. There we go. Perfect. So that's it. That's all we needed to do in this particular step, because that now sets us up for what we're going to do going forward. In the next step, incidentally, since you asked, what we're going to be doing is making it so that we can't get through the door until we pick up a key card. So it's not going to be automatic anymore. And we're going to add a bit more complexity and learn some more stuff. So I will see you in the next step where we'll get all about that key card action. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this step we're going to increase the complexity of what we've been doing a little, and we're going to be working on at least 3 different blueprints, I think, to get all of this working. So let's get stuck in. We're going to make it so that we need a key card to open our door. But first of all, we need to bring in the key card, right? So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my meshes folder, right click, import, and then I'm going to find my key card, which is in the chapter 3 folder. So there it is. All of my settings should be fine because I haven't changed them since last time. So I'm not creating any materials. Collision should already be there, although we don't really need it because we're going to be using a collision sphere, you'll see. But we can just click on import. And then let's open it up. There it is. So this is what the key card looks like, and we need to get some materials on it. There are 3 for this one, and I will make my recommendations for which ones we should use. So this first material, I'm going to do chrome, which just does down the bottom here. Then the next one, there's a blue material in here, which is this solid blue. I quite like that for this detail here. And then for this like key icon and the border, I like the gold colour. Like that. We've got a little bit of metallic goodness going on there. So that is the key card imported and set up. So then we can save that and close it. And now we're going to need to turn that into a blueprint. So we're going to go into our blueprints folder, which is, where is it? There it is. We're going to right click, and this one needs to be an actor just like the last one. So we're going to go blueprint class, actor, and then I'm going to call this one M_key card because that's a good name. It's descriptive. Oh, not M, sorry. I'm going crazy. BP. It's not a material, it's a blueprint. Whew, that was a close one. Okay, then we can open this guy up and get to work. So we're going to need a mesh just like we did last time. So let's add a static mesh. There it is. We're going to call it, I'll just call it card. I don't want to have to type any more than I need to. And then the static mesh over here, I'm going to search for my key card. And we're good to go. Okay, I would actually like this to spin on the spot so that it kind of looks like a collectible to the player. I think that's always a nice touch. So what we're also going to do is add a rotating movement. Like that. And we're just going to leave it called rotating movement. We don't need to do anything else. But over here on our rotation rate, so it's rotating kind of on the Z-axis, it's at 180. I think that's a bit too fast. So I'm just going to bring that down to about 100. And that should be good. Next, we need a way of knowing when the players overlapped with our key card. And for that one, we're going to use a sphere collision. So I'm going to click on add. I'm just going to make sure I go to my key card self up here so that it doesn't become a child of the rotating movement. And then I'm going to type sphere. And then get the sphere collision. And you can see that it goes below our card, which I don't want. I want it to be at about the same height. So I'm going to bring this up. And then I'm just going to make it a bit bigger so that when our player overlaps it, it feels good. So that's it. We've got our sphere and our card. That's ready to go, and it should all spin nicely. Okay, so what we need to do now is make it so that we can pick this up. So we're going to make sure we've got the sphere collision selected, go into our event graph. We don't need any of these events. Get rid of them. And it's going to be an on component begin overlap. On component begin. That didn't work. Let me make sure the sphere's selected. On component. Otherwise it won't work. And then we need to check, is this the player? So we're going to, and then we need to check, is this the player? So we're going to come out of other actor. We're going to cast to third person character. And then if that's true, we want to do something. So we need to destroy the actor. So what we're going to do is just go to destroy. It should get destroyed and look like it's been collected. So let's compile, save, and give that a little test. It's been collected, so let's compile, save, and give that a little test. So I'm going to drop it in my level. And I don't want it too close to my player. I need to be able to walk over to it, put it there. And then let's press play. So we can see it's spinning, it's doing what it needs to do there. And if I run up to it, it disappears. Perfect. The problem is, the door will still open either way. There's nothing stopping the door from opening whether we do or don't have the key card. And we've got no way of the door knowing whether or not we have the key card. So we've got to put some more logic into this to have that all work together. But we're now close. We've got almost everything we need. However, let me just get rid of that. There is one thing I do want to change. I just want to put a light above this key card because I want it to stand out as like a collectible, which I did forget. So we're going to go back into the viewport here. I'm going to add a spotlight. The spotlight up above it. I'm then going to rotate. I'm then going to rotate the spotlight so it goes straight down. And then we're just going to make it kind of a yellow coloured light. So it looks kind of goldeny, I guess. Click on OK. And then I just want to, that it's got a nice bit of gold light around it. A bit of gold light around it, which makes it look like it's important to the player. Okay, so that's good. And then we're going to compile and save that. Perfect. Right, now we need to have a way of knowing whether or not the player has picked up the card, and then the door needs to know, and it's a whole thing. So here's how we're going to do it. Go to your third-person character blueprint. We need to have a variable that can either be true or false. Do they have the key? Yes is true, false is no. And that's going to happen down here. So under the variables section here, there's a little plus icon. I'm going to click on that. And we're just going to call it has key. Question mark? Has key? And by default, it's a Boolean. Booleans mean true or false. 0 or 1. That's kind of all they can be, which is perfect for this. We need to compile that and save it. And then by default, we want it to be false. So we could set it to true here by ticking this box, but we don't want to do that. We want it to be false. And when the player picks up the key card, we want to trigger that to become true. So that's what we'll do. So now that we have that variable there, we can go into our key card, into the event graph, and before we destroy the actor, what we're going to do, because we have already casted the third person character, so now we can do stuff with that. So as the third person character, we're going to set has key. So I just started typing set has, and then it will get this variable. And then we're just going to connect up our logic like that. And then what we're going to do is tick this box. We're going to say set it to true. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is compile and save that. Now what we need to do is also get the door to do a check before it opens. So we're going to go back to our door, into the event graph, that's better. And so before it does any of this, so I'm just going to move this along here a little bit, get all of these. We want to find out, does the player actually have the conditions to open the door? So as the third person character blueprint, we're going to get has key. We don't need to set it now, we want to get it. We want to find out what it is. And we're going to do what's called a branch. And that basically is what we would call an if statement in other kinds of programming. So out of here, we're going to add a branch. And what that means is it will continue if something's true, or it might do something else if it's false. And our condition is here, has key. So what we want to do is if that's true, like that, it's going to go on and open the door. However, if it's false, we want to tell the player that they need the key card. And we're going to use something called a print string for that. So let's put that in there. So out of false, we're going to type print string. And there it is, print string comes up. And then we're going to type in here what we want to show up. So we're going to put door locked, exclamation mark, key card required. Perfect. So now, when we overlap this, it's going to do that check, and it will only open the door if we have the key card. Let's see if that all works. So into our level. So I'm not going to get the key. I'm going to walk over to the door. And you can see the door is now not opening. Now it will do the closing animation because we've not set that up yet. We also need to set that up, but it won't open yet. So door locked, key card required. So let's get the key card. That should now have set that has key to true. So now we walk over to the door and the door opens. Very successful. So what we need to do now is just make sure that we don't have any strange behavior going on when the door should not open or it should be closed when we walk away from it. So let's go back into our door blueprint and make that change. And it's actually just the same deal as before. So what we're going to say is we're just going to move this stuff down a little bit. I'm going to try if I can select it. And we only want this to happen if the player actually has the key card. So we're going to do a branch. And as the third person character, we're just going to get has key. If that's true, the door will be able to close again behind them. So it should stay locked either way. Now in this case, I'm not going to add anything to false because I don't need it to do anything. It will just stop. It will do nothing if they don't have the key card. So let's compile, save, and play. So we'll go up to the door. Door lock, key card required. It now isn't being weird when we walk away from it. We can pick up the key card and then the door opens and we can run out and the level will reset. And what's good about resetting the level is it also resets your variables. So I now can't get out of the door again until I pick up the key card again. Hooray! Okay, we're almost done with this, but before we move on, there is one more thing that I want you to do because it's important. Blueprints can get incredibly messy. They can look like angry spaghetti. So we're going to add some comments to our code. So what I'm going to do is just move that one down a little bit. I'm going to select everything that controls opening the door, and I'm also just going to tighten these up a little bit. Keeping this stuff neat can save a lot of heartache. Believe me, I speak from experience. So I'm going to select all of those, and then I'm going to press C on my keyboard, which adds a comment, and I'm just going to call this open door. Perfect. But then I'm going to go one further, and this section here, which is that one, and yeah, well, just those two, I think. I'm going to add another comment, and I'm just going to call this check has key. Like that. And then I'm just finally going to neaten this up a touch. So now I know what every part of this is doing. And then I'll do the same down here. So I'm just going to neaten it up a little bit. Nice. I'm going to add the check has key first. Close door. And we have now commented our logic. Hooray! Let me just extend that out a little bit. Perfect. And then we can put these guys together. We know what they're doing. Look at us doing proper game programming. It's like we know what we're doing and everything. Okay, so that does it for this step. Well done for making it through. Hopefully not getting too confusing too quickly, but feel free to go over it again to make sure it all makes sense if you are feeling a little bit lost. In the next step, we're going to add an obstacle, which is going to be some fire that will add damage to the player when they stand in it. So I will see you in the next step for that. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. In this step, we're going to create a fire obstacle that will deal damage every second that we are in the fire, which is good. So let's do that. So here's what we need to do. First of all, we need to go back to our third-person character blueprint, and we need to give the character some health to be taken away. And that's going to be another variable. So we're just going to go very basic and have health that is just 100, and when you go down to 0, the player will die. So we're going to add a new variable. I'm going to call it health. It needs to be numerical. So up here we can go variable type, numerical. So up here we can go variable type, and there's a couple that would work for this, but I'm going to choose integer for this, which is essentially a whole number. So integer is what I'm going to choose. Now I'd like to set the default value of this to be 100, but at the moment I can't because I've not compiled the blueprint. So we'll do that, compile, and then I'm going to set the default to be 100, and then I'll have to compile it again. Perfect. So now I'll have some health that I can take down, but I want to also know whether or not the player is standing in the fire. And we need another variable to control that. So we can do the checks as to whether or not we should still be taking the damage off. So I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call it inFire, ? And this guy needs to be a Boolean because it's either going to be true or false. And we'll compile it. And by default, I want this to be false because at the beginning of the game, the player shouldn't be in the fire. So that should be all the variables we need to get us started. Okay, now we're going to create the blueprint that is going to start taking this damage off. And it's going to be a custom event. So I'm going to right click and start typing custom. And you can add a custom event. Now this is an event that we can have called by other events, which is very useful. I'm going to call this custom event fire damage. And this is only going to happen if they're in the fire. And we also don't want this to happen instantly. We want it to happen once they've been in the fire for a second. So what we're going to do is we are going to add a delay before we do anything. So if we just add a delay node, and we're going to have the delay be 1 second, like that. And once a second has passed, we'll see if they're actually in the fire. So it might be that they run through the fire, this event's triggered, but it won't start taking any health until they're still in the fire after a second. So let's, after we've waited a second, add a branch in the fire. So let's get in fire. So I'm just dragging it from here, look, let go, on fire. So I'm just dragging it from here, look, let go, and we're going to get it and plug it into there. So we want to know, is that true? And if it is true, we want to take 10 off the health. So what we're going to do is get the health, or I'm going to drag the health in rather. I'm going to set it. What it is, take 10 away and then set that as the new value. So in order to take 10 away and then set that as the new value. So in order to do that, we need to get the health. So that's going to get the current health, which by default will be 100. And then what I'm going to do is drag out of here and I want to subtract from it. Subtract, like that. And what I'm going to do is take away 10. So I'm taking the health minus 10 and then we're going to plug that into the result. So now when we go into the fire, that's going to take 10 health off. Now how are we going to know that? Well, we also are going to need to put that on screen somehow. So the final thing that we're going to do before we test it is we are going to do a print string like that. And we are going to take what is coming out of the health and just plug it in here. Now, what's going to happen here, you can see it's going to convert an integer to a string, which happens here. So string has to be text. So what Unreal Engine will do is it will put it through this node, which will just convert it to text so it'll show on screen. That's everything we need for this particular event right now. But the problem is we've got no way of triggering this event. So that's what we need to do now. So let's just compile and save that. We're now going to go back into our blueprints folder. So let's go in here. I'm going to create a new blueprint class. It's going to be an actor, and I'm just going to call this one BP_fire damage. Perfect. Now I don't really need this to do a lot. So let's open it up. I'm going to add in a box collision seen in my game. So in the details for this, I'm just going to start typing hidden. And you can see it. So in the details for this, I'm just going to start typing hidden. And you can see it's hidden in game. And I don't want it to be hidden yet. We'll hide it later, but for now, I want to be able to see where this box is. So we're going to turn that off, compile and save. And I'm just going to drop this into my level. I'm just going to drop it here. I'm going to bring it up above the ground. And I want it to be a little bit taller. Not that tall, a little bit shorter than that. I'm just going to rotate it around slightly. Try and get an angle that I like. And then we're going to make it a little bit longer, like that. That's still too tall. And then what I want to do is just go press play, and now I'll be able to see where that box is. So I can tell when my player is overlapping it, which is good. So then what we need to do is use that to start adding damage to the player. So what we'll do now is go back into our fire damage and into the event graph for that. We're going to get rid of all of these guys, and it's going to be a on component begin overlap. Perfect. We need to check if it's the player, as we've done in previous steps. So we're going to cast the third person character, and then we want to do a couple of things as the third person character. So what we will do first is we are going to set in fire to true, because they will in fact be in the fire. So let's tick that box, and you see I'm connecting everything up, so my logic continues. And we'll also want to trigger, so also add the third person character. So I'm dragging out of here again. We're going to do the fire damage, like that. And we will call that. So we're going to say true, and then it's going to set that to start happening. Now, you can see that this is a little bit messy here. And I can make that a bit neater by just double clicking on this blue wire, like that. And this adds what's called a reroute node. And I can just use these to stop things overlapping too much and make it a bit easier to follow the logic. And there we go. So that's all that we need to have happen now when we overlap the fire. So let's compile and save that. And let's see if this does anything. So I'm now going to run over my firebox. And you can see that 90 was displayed in the top left hand corner of the screen. If I leave that and go back in, it waits a second and then 80. And also if I run straight through it, it still takes the health. And that's because we haven't added an end overlap yet that will stop that damage happening. So let's put that in quickly. So we're going to go back to fire damage. And then we're going to get for our box component. So on component end overlap. Check that it's the third person character that has stopped overlapping. And if that is the case, we're going to set in fire to false. Excellent. So let's compile, save, and let's test again. So when we run into this fire, it will wait a second and take 90 or take 10 off. And then if I run through it, it doesn't take any health because I wasn't in there for long enough. If I go back in, this should now bring me down to 80. Perfect. So now we're getting there. It is taking damage, but it's not taking damage every second that we're in there. And we need to figure out a way of doing that, don't we? Because that's kind of the point of the fire damage. So we're going to go back into our third person character, and it's this event here, the fire damage one, that we need to add some more logic to make this keep happening. And it's actually quite simple. All we need to do is go around again and repeat this in a loop, and it will repeat while ever the player is in the fire because we've got a check. So here's what we'll do. We're going to drag out of our print string at the end. We're going to go back into the delay at the beginning. And what I'll then do is I'm just going to move this a minute so I can put some reroute nodes in so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to put this one here, and we'll add another one there. So you can see that's now going to go around and around, and it should stop. So the way off of this loop is when this becomes false, when we're no longer in the fire. So let's test that out. down 90, 80, 70, 60. So we're losing health. Let's now leave that. 70, 60. So we're losing health. Let's now leave that. And you can see that we're no longer losing health anymore. That's good. So now let's go in, and there's a couple more problems we need to solve before we're done with this step. So you can see we keep going down, and the health will now go down below 100, which is not what we want. We kind of want it to stop at 0. And there is a node that we can add in that will quite easily do that for us. So back into third person character, and it's here. So when we're setting the health, we're taking 10 off, which is what we wanted to do, but we don't want it to take 10 off when we go below 0. And we can use a node here called a clamp. So we're going to take this result here, and I'm just going to type clamp. And you can see in brackets it's integer because we're dealing with an integer. And what we can do is set the min and max that these numbers can ever be. So I'm going to set the minimum to 0 and the max to 100 because that's all I ever want these to be at this stage. And then the return value of that is going to go into our health there. So let me just neaten that up a little bit so I can see what I'm working with. There we go. So, save and play. So we're going to go and stand in our fire, play. So we're going to go and stand in our fire, and you can see that the health is going down, and now we're going to clamp those values so it can only ever be between 0 and 100. You see now it's still trying to take 10 off, but it can't because we clamped those values. So we now have a way of getting our player's health all the way down to 0. And that's basically it for all the logic that we need to happen in this step. So we've now got it so that we have an obstacle that the player can overlap. It will take health off them, and then they will eventually die. In the next step, we're going to make this all feel a bit more dramatic. So we're going to make it so that the player actually will die in the next step. So we're going to add some ragdoll physics and make him all fall to the ground. And we're also going to add in some fire so that it just looks cooler. So join me in the next step where we will finish off this wonderful fire obstacle, and we will have learned an awful lot about making games. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, we are now approaching the end of chapter 3, and we have looked at all kinds of different ways of triggering events and having logic happen, and we're having a lot of fun with it. But our player isn't dying yet, and that's what we're going to focus on in this step. So let's get stuck in. So we're going to go back to our third person character, and we've currently got a couple of events happening. We're going to create one more custom event, which is going to be character death. I'm just going to right click here, and we're going to call a custom event. So add custom event. I'm going to call this death, and then we need to decide what we want to happen when we want the player to die. So the first thing we will want to happen when our character dies is disable character movement so that the player can no longer run around, because that feels weird. So what we can do is get the character movement from up here. We're going to drag that down. And if we drag out of here, we can type disable movement. Like that. Perfect. So that's the first thing that will happen on our custom event. The player will lose the ability to move the character. Now what we're going to do is we want the character to be able to ragdoll, and it's not set up for that yet. So we're just going to go to Mesh up here. And we're going to scroll down, and we're looking for the collisions section. So here's collisions here. And then we've got collision presets character mesh. And what I want to do is just change that to ragdoll. And that will just mean it will do what we want it to do when we simulate physics when the player dies. But we need to make that change for it to work. So now in our blueprint, we are going to want to set physics to true to allow the ragdolling to happen. So we are going to drag the mesh in like that. And then we're going to type set simulate physics. And we'd like that to become true. So I'm going to tick that box. And that's two things we've got happening. So the movement's going to be disabled and the physics are going to be enabled. So those are the first two components we need. Then we're going to want to have the game reset, but not immediately. We want the player to sort of realise that they've died first. So we're going to add a delay in. And a delay, I think, of about 4 seconds works for this. So we'll type 4 in there. Lovely. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to destroy the actor. So, destroy actor. Now, it's actually that's going to be useful to us here, because when we destroy the actor, we've already got something that happens up here. It's going to reset the game. So we're basically going from there to up there. From there to there. Okay, so that now is our little death sequence set up, but there's nothing to make that happen yet, is there? So nothing's going to trigger this. And that needs to happen up here. So when the fire damage is happening, we're going to find out whether or not we've hit 0, and if we have, we'll kill the player. So once we have done our 10 damage and we've printed it to screen, what we're going to do next is find out whether or not the damage is at 0, if the health is at 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a branch. And I'm just going to disconnect from here for now. And we need to know the condition is going to be, is the health at or below 0? So we're going to get the health out of that, and I'm going to type this, which is the less than symbol. And I'm going to choose less than or equal to. So if it is 0, essentially, because we've got equal in there, or less than that, because sometimes you might have something that you forgot that takes your health below 0. So it's good to have less than or equal to. If it is less than or equal to 0, well then in that case we want it to kill the player, don't we? So from true, we're going to do death. Lovely. But if it's not true, then we want to keep taking health off. So from false, we're going to go back into there and have that continue to do its thing. So let's test that out and see if it works. So compile and save. I'm now going to run into the fire, and then we'll wait for the health to come down. So it's on 20, 10, 0. And there we go, we die, we wait 4 seconds, it resets, and if we run back into the fire, you can see that it also resets our variables, so now the health is back up at 100, and we've got to bring that down again, which is pretty good. So we've now got almost everything set up that we need. Perfect, right, let's make this look pretty. So I'm now just going to resize this again, so this is going to be something that the player has to get around. I'm just going to hide it in this corner over here. So we'll put that to about there. Let's go a little bit longer. Is there room for the player there? Yeah, I think it's still a little bit too tall. I want the player to be able to jump over this as well. So I think that's where the damage is going to be for the fire. I'm also going to grab my keycard, and I'm going to put that in the corner behind the fire. Lovely. Now we're going to use some of the starter content to sort of dress this up a little bit. So if I go to content and starter content, there's a blueprints folder, and in that there is something called blueprint effect fire. I'm going to drag that in, and you will see, hopefully, that we have some fire going on. And what I'm going to do now is just place this first one where I want it, which is going to be about here. And then holding my Alt key, I'm going to create a few copies of it that go where my firebox is. This one over here. Call for the player to get around. That looks pretty good. So if we now, that looks pretty good. So if we now, yeah, nice. We can see that there's fire. The player can jump over it and not get any health taken off them if they want, or they can wander into it and start losing health. Perfect. So now that we've got the fire there doing the job of the collision box, we can make it so it's not visible in game. So we're going to go back to our fire damage, click on the box, and we'll turn hidden in game back on. Compile that, and then we'll play again. You can see now the keycard is there, and how do we get to it? We're going to run and get it there. So now we can get out of the door, and we're all good. Lovely. Okay, now let's do the finishing touches. I'm going to add in, from this same folder, there's some smoke. I want this room to look smoky. So, sort of about here, I think, is a good place to put it. And what I like to do with this is just scale it right up. Maybe that was too big. Let me just see what the details are for this. That's 10 times bigger. Let's go for about that. And this is just going to make the room feel smokier to the player as well. Let's maybe move it over that side a bit. And now as we look around, you can see that the room feels a lot more like maybe the spaceship's just crashed or something. So that looks good. And then it also kind of hides the keycard a bit. Maybe a bit too well. I'll let you be the judge of that. So that bit's done anyway. So we've now got our smoke in the room. We've also got our blueprint fire effect. And we've got our keycard doing its thing. The final thing for the finishing touches is going to be commenting all of our logic up. So let's make sure that everything's done. So the door is done. The third person character isn't. So this one is going to be, so C for a comment, destroy and this one is death. Nice. Let's go into the key card and check that we've done everything there. I'm going to comment that up. Collect key card. And finally for the fire damage, take infrastructure report. We'll put it in infrastructure report. We'll put it in fire, and this one's going to be called out of fire, like that. And then we will compile, save all of those blueprints, save the level as well. Save the level as well. Okay, so that pretty much brings us to the end of chapter 3. The only thing left for you to do in the next step will be the challenge, if you're feeling up to it. So I will see you in the next video where you can put into practice some of what you've learned. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Congratulations on completing chapter 3. You have now got lots of interactive elements going on in your game. I hope you're now ready to be challenged though, because I have a 3-part challenge for you this time. So, challenge number 1 is to add in another fire obstacle somewhere else in your room. So I've just put one in the corner here, and you can see it behaves just like the previous one. So we've got that. That is challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is when you collect the key card, I want you to do a print string to the screen to show that you've got the key card. So there you see, got the key card comes up in the top corner there. So that is number 2. And then number 3 is actually happening up here. You might have noticed that my outliner is now looking tidy again. So I've left the door small and the key card out where I can see them. But in my storeroom folder, let me just close some stuff down. I now have a fire obstacles folder that I've added, and everything to do with the fire obstacles is now in that folder. So you also need to organize your outliner as well. So just to recap, I want you to create one more fire obstacle. I want you to add some text to show that you've collected the key card, and I would like you to also organize your outliner to keep things neat. And then you'll be ready for chapter 4, where we're going to start looking at creating our very own materials. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to help me create more content like this, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The contributions I get through Patreon make a huge difference in keeping this channel going. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to make sure you don't miss my upcoming tutorials. Your support and engagement mean the world to me and help my channel continue to grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.